This afternoon is July 23rd, 2020. This is a so-called emergency meeting of the Newmarket School Board held during the pandemic under the emergency rules. We're holding the meeting pursuant to RSA 91-A:2-3B, Executive Order 2020-04, Section 8, and Emergency Order number 12 in Section 3. As we note on each agenda during these meetings, if the public has any problems with access during the meeting, they can call the SAU office. It's 603-659-5020. I'll call the meeting to order. The first thing we'll need to do is a roll call and just let us know if there's anybody with you. This is Mike Kennison. There's nobody with me.
Elizabeth McKinney, there's no one with me.
Kim Shelton, no one's with me.
Gary Swanson, I'm alone.
Amy Tilton alone.
Susan Gibbons alone.
Dave Jacqueline.
Sean Pine, I'm with Erica and Dave Dalton.
Jana Mellon, I'm alone.
Okay, I think that covers it. So a couple of things from the outset. Amy, you had asked if we could move the public comment portion to the end to accommodate folks who may join late. I have no problem doing that. Is the board comfortable with that?
I
Steve,
am.
Yep.
Kim said yes. Gary says yes. Okay, let's do that. And also, we have on the agenda non-public session. We typically put that at the end anyway, so folks who are listening in don't have to wait around for us and not wondering when we're going to come into public session. So if it's okay, I'd like to move that to the end as well.
Yeah.
Which gets us next to, well, first of all, thanks for all accommodating this earlier time. We had a heavy agenda this week and maybe have another one next week. And we thought it would be beneficial while people are fresh to move this back and not keep people late into the evening. So thanks everyone for accommodating. The first item we have is under reports and school board committee reports. I can report from the building committee that we met last week. We had a good meeting. We met at the cafetorium. We went over sort of the punch list of things that are left to do. We're going to actually have one more meeting. They wanted to come back and see it, right to the end after all those punch list items are done. Just so the school board's aware as well, we are meeting with the construction folks, Ekman and Banwell, next week with Greg Marles and Jana and Dave and Al Zeke, who's co-chair of the building committee, to go over the punch list just to make sure that we have firmly understand what the timelines are, what there is to be done, and that it's all getting done in an orderly fashion here before school resumes. So and that meeting is again on Channel 13 if folks are interested in tuning in. We did take the building committee members on a tour. It was a long odyssey. It had been 5 years to take them through that building and see the fruits of their efforts. You could tell that they were very very pleased with the result. And again, I've said it at other meetings, but I can't wait to be able to have the public get in there and see those spaces. They're really amazing. So that's it for my report. I haven't received any other reports from other committee members.
Mike, SST meets tomorrow.
Okay.
So I'm going to be getting the lowdown on that.
Great, thanks, Elizabeth. Does SST know whether it's going to happen this fall or not?
I'm going to assume that's what the meeting's about, to discuss that.
Gotcha. Okay. If there's no other questions on so far, let's proceed, Susan, to your report.
Thank you. So just a couple of items. We have a big agenda tonight, but just thought it might be Nice to share a few highlights over the last month. So Mike and I met with Tony and Steve on the town side earlier this month to review our shared services facility director position and also determine possible dates for a joint meeting, in September. And so I thought it was a great meeting. We got to share our ideas about, what makes sense for us. And we left the meeting with Steve tasked with reviewing the MOU to see if there's ways to modify that to better meet our current needs. So he did send that to me 2 days ago, and I haven't had a chance to review it, but we'll put that on my schedule in the near future. So, so that's the update on that. We continue to hire staff, and we're really excited to let folks know that all of the faculty positions at the elementary school have been filled, and that we were in the final stages of hiring for the remaining junior, senior high school faculty positions. So, if it all goes well, and, we have qualified applicants that make it through the paces, then we're hoping that by the end of next week, we'll be have a full roster of faculty at the junior, senior high as well. Also, and this will be quite a departure from this year's experience or the FY20 experience, that the auditors are actively in reviewing the FY20 financials. And so Jana, our new business administrator, and Dave Jack in the business office has been very busy working with them. It's a new auditing firm, and when you introduce a new auditing firm, there's a lot more work involved. Getting some baseline information to them so that they can then do their evaluation of internal controls, your financial position, and all of that. So we've been incredibly busy over the last several weeks having them in. And this is very unusual and remarkable to get auditors in this early. It's ideal because if they can audit your financial statements, then your state reporting is based on actual audited work. So you don't wind up having to submit, your end of year reports to the state and then having to modify them. This allows you to, keep information clear and transparent to the public. And so we're really grateful for actually Dave Jack's work in getting us up on the front end of the schedule with the auditors. So the challenge, of course, with that is that we're in the middle of a pandemic. Jana's transitioning in, and we have a whole new business office. So trying to actually pull off an audit under these conditions is super challenging. But if we lose our slot for the next for the remainder of the contract, we would not be able to get back in the front end of the queue with them. So I certainly appreciate the work of Jana and the business office and Dave trying to accomplish this under these conditions. So also, onboarding of new staff. So one thing that occurred a couple of weeks ago as reopening has moved forward in our community is that the police department has opened up for fingerprinting. And so all of the staff that we had hired earlier this year, normally once they get their contract, part of the process is they would come in, sign their contract, get all of their fingerprinting information, go down to the police department, but we've not been able to do that. So last week we had all of our new hires in, processing all their paperwork, notarizing it, all of that, and getting that done. So really want to give a shout out to Patty for pulling all that together and processing everyone through in such an efficient way. But in addition to that, of course, we have our administrative team, many of which have started. You can see here tonight, Jana Mellon has joined us. Shana Thorell has also transitioned to the AP position. David Dalton is now here full-time, so glad to have him amongst us. And we also have Dave Cressy, who is working for us part-time until we're able to fill the shared position. As you all are well aware, that this pandemic has created, many challenges for us as we try to contemplate, how to modify our facilities and, what we need in order to be able to open schools. But we also had a whole list of projects that were in the queue from last year, wrapping up building project, and of course our warrant articles. So, we just we're not able to continue on without having some support, and certainly didn't want to create any undue pressure on the town side, given all that they have on their plate to try to fill the position of facilities director. So we're super happy to have Dave Cressy with us as well. Deb Black, who is our new assistant superintendent, will not be starting until the middle of August. But this last 3 days, the entire administrative team was able to spend some time together, doing some, work, getting acquainted with one another, processing last year, talking about our values and setting our priorities for the upcoming year. And Deb was able to join us for that. Also, we've been really stressing the importance of taking some time off. So folks have, signed up to take some vacation time, and we're all, grateful to get a few minutes to breathe. Sean had a week off, or a little over a week off, and I think Dave took a little time before he started. And Jen's taking a week next week. Deborah Raffo took a week this week. I know Christina Cochran took some time. So really, really glad that folks are getting a few minutes to take a breath and clear their minds, and do what nurtures and supports them before we transition into all the work that we have ongoing. So as you all know, we're going to get an update tonight on the summer school. And so I'm, that's taken a lot of time and effort over the last 2 months, trying to figure out where the learning gaps are, both for regular education students as well as special education students. And then, imagining how we're going to deliver those services in the middle of a pandemic. So, so we're going to have an update on that. We've, tonight on the agenda is also, a little update on school opening. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because we've spent a lot of time already with a public meeting earlier this week, and a meeting with staff, and letters that have gone out to the community. But we did have a member of our public request that this be put on the agenda. And so we certainly want to offer them the opportunity to speak here tonight. And then we have, my rate of state reports that come at the end of the year. And so we've been actively completing those. And of course, ongoing work on the schedules, and we'll give you an update on that. And then of course, last but not least, curriculum projects. So we're queuing up, a handful or maybe more, maybe a dozen curriculum projects, inviting teachers to do some significant work on updating and or developing curriculum for new courses that we'll be adding. So we've been incredibly busy with all of that and much, much more, but wanted to at least give a shout out in a few of these areas in my report tonight. So with that, one thing I do want to mention is under discussion item 1, the student pass fail. We do not have not had the time to dig in and get some historical information about prior trends, what it means, and how does that relate to COVID or not. So that we're going to have to postpone until a future date. But we do have updates tonight on summer school and scheduling. And so we'll, transition. We have a, part of the team here tonight to share some information with you on that under the next agenda item. So that's it for my report tonight.
Thank you, Susan. I saw Janice smiling ear to ear when she heard that the auditor's report was going to be early. So I'm taking that that's a good thing. And Dave, thank you for doing that, because I think it's especially important this year to clear our decks early, because I suspect we'll have a busy September. So Thanks for your work on that. Might as well get right into, if nobody has any questions, or I'll ask the board if they have any questions for Susan. Okay, let's get into the discussion items then. And I guess the first item on is that we're going to consider tonight is summer school.
Yes, so from I think our last meeting together, shared with you our summer school program. A lot of time and effort has been put into that, and so I'm really excited to have here tonight Erica McNeil, our Director of Student Services, who's going to share with you some highlights of our student services portion of the summer school. That, of course, part of what we offer there is mandated by law, and she'll speak to that. And then Sean's going to give us, a little primer on our elementary school competency recovery summer school program. And then Jen's going to provide an update on the junior senior high school summer. And then Dave is going to give us an overview of scheduling. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Erica, and Sean is going to share his screen so that you can see their slides. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Give us 1 minute.
We should have some elevator music or something going, fill the void.
Susan, while we wait, I know you don't have the historic pass-fail comparison. Do we have any kind of inkling into from the teachers as to the number of students who just weren't active? I thought last time we spoke, you'd said it was similar, maybe a different set of students, but similar to those who normally weren't as engaged in school.
Well, we don't have numbers per se, but we're gonna speak a bit about that and the impact on COVID on our summer school program, to the extent that we can tie it directly to that. We'll share our impressions with you tonight.
Hopefully that filled long enough for you guys.
The PowerPoint isn't coming up yet, so another minute.
View presentation.
All right, can everyone see this now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. So student services summer programming. This is a program that is offered every summer for any break in school to students with disabilities who require it. We have a rubric that we use to make that determination. And it is required for us to provide that for a free and appropriate public education. Every IEP team meets every year to make this determination, whether or not a student qualifies or not, and to what services they require for their programming. This summer, we have 57 students participating in our special education extended year programming, and that's preschool through grade 12. We have 18 staff members and 3 contracted service providers who are providing services to our students. As I said previously, all service amounts are determined individually by a student's IEP team. And at the end of the summer, every student has a report written that includes what kind of growth they've made towards their IEP goals or individual education plan, which are developed for each student.
If there's any questions, what we'll do is stop in each section because I think sometimes you might have, if you have a question, it's hard to retain it as we go through the slides. So if you have any questions about this portion of our student services summer school programming, maybe Erica, you can speak to this number in relation to prior years in terms of students served.
Yeah, and if anyone has questions, please jump in. I only see the presentation. I can't see your faces in the Google Hangout, so I can't see if anybody is, waving or raising their hand. Our numbers are relatively consistent. We're up about 3 students from previous years. We do have more students who have accepted services. So part 1 is we determine whether or not students require these services and we offer those services, and then parents either accept those or they reject our services, and that's complete parent decision whether or not they're going to participate in these services. I do think because our services are being provided in a remote way this summer, instead of having to be here in Newmarket to get their students to the program, a family could be on vacation and still access services. So it has provided some flexibility for families. So we've had a few more students actually take us up on the offer. Our offer, though, is only about 3 students additional from prior years.
Erica, how did it work out for you with the remote option?
Scheduling is always interesting. Normally when we have students who are just coming here, they come for a portion of the day and we work within that scheduled time. When we have a student who is receiving academic services in addition to speech services or OT, the contracted provider or all of our teachers and our providers have to kind of work around every student's and every provider's schedule. Some families did want additional flexibility in the timing. And because of the multiple services and multiple providers, we weren't able to give a ton of flexibility in offering those times. Some families wanted, a afternoon time slot was going to be the best, where a lot of families didn't want the 8 a.m. time slot. But we really kind of had to work with the schedule that we had as much as possible. A lot of the providers were pretty flexible and trying to reschedule if they could. But scheduling is always the most difficult part of that.
Thank you.
Other questions? There we go. Next, oops. Is it back one? Okay. The next portion of the Student Services Summer Program is that we are providing services in a tutoring model 1-to-1 to students who are identified as English language learners. So that's English as second language for our department. We have 1 tutor and 1 teacher who are providing those services. We have 13 students who are participating in that program. It is running 4 weeks, 3 days per week. And the focus is on expanding students' writing, speaking, reading, and listening ability of the English language. Those are areas that are part of our testing, our annual testing for these students, and it helps determine the amount of service they require during the school year. The summer program is not required by law. This is something that we do that is above and beyond what is required, but we have offered this service for the summer in the past 3 summers since I have been here. And these services are funded through a Title III grant that I had written this spring.
Erica, this is Amy. Can I ask a question about, you just mentioned the grant?
Yep.
Is it completely fund the whole program?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and is that a 1-year grant or how does that work?
So each of our grants run on a 27-month cycle. So currently I have 3 separate Title III grant cycles open because those 27 months overlap each other.
Okay.
The 18-19 grant should be wrapping up at the end of September, and then I'd only have 2 grants that I'm working between. So I always use up, obviously, the older grants that are going to expire first before writing the newer grants. Next year's grant application has not come out for this grant, but I am planning on still applying for that grant. And this grant is it's called a consortium grant. To receive these grant funds, you have to have a $10,000 limit that you receive, and Newmarket doesn't have that limit. So we partnered with Oyster River so that we hit the $10,000 limit and we write our grant together.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Yep.
Erica, it's Gary. How many students do we have in our schools, would you estimate, that would need ESLL? I'm just curious.
Without the numbers right in front of me, we usually run between 23 and 25 students who are receiving services. Again, their annual testing that is done by the state determines the amount of service they receive during the school year. So we do have some students who require daily intensive services so that they can access the curriculum. And we have some students that are called a monitor status, which means they haven't quite hit the limit to exit out of our program, but as long as they maintain their limit for 2 years in a row, then they could be exited. So students, as I said, there's 23 to 25 who are accessing that each year, but on varying levels of service need.
And are these 13 students invited, or just the ones who decided to attend?
These are the ones that decided to attend. We focused on our neediest students who had the most level of service. Our ESOL department did a great job this last year. We were able to actually get our state testing in. Not every district was able to do that. And we were able to exit a couple of students this year. So, students who are on the higher end, we weren't focusing on those students. We were really focusing mostly at the elementary level, students who have only been accessing the language, between 1 and 5 years.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Great. Thank you for all your work on this.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. How are you this evening? I'm muted.
No, you're good.
Okay.
No,
Oh, no, you just moved forward. Can you, hopefully everyone can hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm just going to kind of give you an update of Newmarket Elementary School Summer School. This program is actually run every summer since I've been here, and I believe it was with previous administration as well. As typical, we have our classroom teachers identify those students who we feel would benefit from receiving additional instruction over the summer. This year we had 36 children that were invited. 21 families decided to participate in the program. This isn't, it isn't something that they have to participate in. As always, we kind of focus on the mastery of the math and literacy competencies at the grade levels. So in the past, this was something that was done in school. It's being done remotely this year. We have 7 instructors who are certified teachers. They are working on a kind of a one-on-one tutoring environment up to 3 hours a week per child. The instructors will be obviously monitoring the growth over the summer. At the end of the summer, they will pass along the information to the children's new teacher of where the student now rests in terms of their math and literacy skills and competencies. And as in the past, this is a 4-week program that we've run. The numbers that we have, 21, are pretty typical. With any past summers, we've had anywhere from around, I would say 20 to maybe 28 or so in the program. The program pretty much targets our upper elementary, although we do have some lower elementary involved this summer as well. So what's nice about the remote environment too is that, when you had it in the building, we had defined hours. Now the teachers that are doing this remotely, they've worked with the parents, so maybe they're not available first thing in the morning, so they're working with the student later in the afternoon. Or, okay, I'm going to meet 2 times in the week, at one time at 9 o'clock in the morning. And on Wednesday it's at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So the teacher's been really flexible about that. So that's kind of I guess, a hidden benefit of the situation that we're in right now, that we're in the remote environment. But it's always great to see that we have families take this offer up.
So Sean, it looks like, I'm guessing it's about 1 hour per instructor. It probably varies, but approximately. How does that compare to in-person summer school?
Yeah, in-person summer school, it was typically a 3-hour session, but it was a 3-hour session with all the kids there.
Yeah.
So what's nice about this, you're getting that instruction in that one-on-one environment. So I would believe that you're going to be more productive in that sort of setting than you are with, if I had 3rd, 4th grade kids in my summer school program, I might have had 8. So instead of, having that, it's more personalized instruction.
And are these all the certified teachers, are they from Newmarket, or is it just from?
All teachers within our district. Yeah, everyone from the elementary school.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it was really nice that they step up, and it's great to see that go on. We're fortunate, not a lot of elementary schools run summer school. It was new to me when I got to Newmarket. So kudos to Newmarket for providing this opportunity for the kids.
Absolutely. Not only is it highly, highly unusual to see it at the elementary level, but also the middle school level. Also, and Erica's program with the ESLO population is also something that's very unusual. So I think these are just other ways that, because we're small, we're able to provide some targeted programming to help advance student learning in ways that bigger school districts might find challenging.
Hi everyone, this is Jen DeStefano. I'll be speaking about the summer programming at the junior senior high school. At the high school, there were 61 students who were contacted through email and a letter offering them an opportunity to do credit recovery over the summer in English, social studies, and mathematics courses. We had 38 students who decided to participate in credit recovery in at least one, some of them more than one course. We have 29 students who are working on English, either English 9, 10, or 11. So those would be students in grades 9 through 11. We have 19 students working on social studies. And for the most part, we were able to support students in our 2 required social studies full year courses, which would be US History, which is the grade 9 course, and Western Civilizations, which is the grade 10 course. And we have 20 students, grades 9 through 11, participating in mathematics. For the most part, those are students who are recovering credits in Algebra 1. Other students who were invited did not choose to participate. As a result, we'll have some options for them in the fall in a combined way. In some cases, kids may have to repeat a course that they didn't complete successfully. So we would have to adjust their schedule to re-enroll them in that course. But additionally, we have built into the master schedule next year some credit and competency review and recovery in all content areas, math, English, science, and social studies. So students who didn't participate this summer would have an opportunity to have a semester course or a year if they needed it to recover the credits from the courses that they didn't complete successfully this year. At the middle school, we had 20 students who were contacted again via email, letter, and some follow-up telephone calls, inviting them to participate in some summer school review remediation in either English language arts and or math. Of the 20, we had no takers who wanted to participate in ELA. There were only 6 students recommended for ELA, and none of them wanted to take part in the program. We have 4 students participating in math, and for the most part, they're 8th grade students. All of our summer programming is being taught by licensed or highly qualified teachers. And from the updates I've gotten from the staff, because they've been doing a great job communicating with me over the course of the program, we've got a lot of kids having some nice success. So there are quite a few students who are going to be able to recover these credits so that they don't need to build them into their program going further. Any questions about summer programming at the junior senior high?
You're on mute, Amy.
Sorry about that. So I have a question. Well, you said that for students that didn't take this option for the fall, you would have it built into the schedule. So is it something that they work on individually within the classroom, or is it
So
something?
they're actual sections that we've built. So we have at least one section that would be run by a teacher in that area. And what will happen is that each student, as we're doing our summer programming, will sort of mirror in the fall. Each student would have an individualized plan for what competencies they needed to complete in order to earn their credit for the course. So the kids would be together in a classroom with a teacher from the content area, but they would each be working independently on whatever competencies they needed to finish. So they would be doing some independent work, but also have the teacher there available to support them. And we would anticipate that those classes would be pretty small, so kids can get some one-on-one attention.
Okay.
So that would replace, say, an elective course in their schedule, but it's a much better option than having to, say, take all of Algebra 1 over when you could just have a semester to work on the 4 or 5 topics that you didn't complete successfully.
Is it typically done that way? I've never heard that.
No, we have never done that before. In the past, we've required kids to complete the entire course.
Mm-hmm.
So one reason that that's been problematic is, for example, in the English department, kids need to pass English every year, 9, 10, 11, and 12, in order to graduate. So what may happen, and we haven't had summer programming either, if a student failed English 9 as a freshman, when they came to school next year, they would have English 9 and English 10 on their schedule. They'd have to double up. So that, can imagine if English is already something that you struggle with, now having double the workload isn't necessarily an educationally sound practice. So this will give kids an opportunity to move on with their grade level and then have a smaller setting to sort of catch up on what they didn't get the previous year without really delaying their ability to matriculate to the next grade.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Again, all of this is new programming that we're adding this year. And I have to commend Jen for all of her work in this area to help develop this programming and bring it to fruition in the middle of a pandemic. So kudos and thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's really nice to see some additional new faces from the community for me. It's been kind of an interesting experience coming in new with this whole COVID issue because I haven't had as many face-to-face meetings with people, but it's nice to see some faces tonight. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to address the board this evening. So I'm going to talk a little bit about master scheduling. And obviously I started later in this process, but one of the things that I want to share with you is sort of just master scheduling from a high school perspective. And the format that was used here this year is, I just want to say at the onset, is very typical, very typically the process for master scheduling really in any building. So the master schedule this year began in February with the review of the program of studies, and my understanding is the addition of some additional electives, in particular, some new courses, high interest courses for students, particularly in the elective areas. So that was approved in February. And then at that point, the information was then shared with kids. So student assemblies to review the program of studies to, I'm sure, I wasn't here, but I'm sure there was some pumping of the new courses and the electives to try to generate some interest and excitement around that. In March, parents were informed of the course selection process and the new courses as well as how the scheduling would work going forward. And then following that, the counselors actually visited the English classes to, again, meet with the students to talk about course selection, to advise them on things that might be beneficial to them depending on what year they were in, where they were in their studies. And that whole process is pretty typical of what happens in particularly in high schools, really everywhere, as you prepare to build the master schedule. So on March 12th, the students actually submitted their course selections through, I believe, I don't know if it was pen and paper or whether they used the Infinite Campus portal. I'm not sure about that, but they submitted their selections. And then what happens is that the scheduling committee sits down with the staff. They look at the signups, how many students were interested in each course. And that's where you have to make the hard decisions about, okay, well, which sections can we support? How many sections of each are we going to run? So that process happens collaboratively with the teacher leaders in the core areas and as well as the unified arts. So then what happens is the committee really goes to work. That's where the work starts, right? So they sit down and they begin to build that master schedule with the sections, knowing what people will be teaching, and really try to massage that until they get students placed to the highest level that they can. So it's typical in a high school that the scheduling process, if it's done well, gets about 80% of the requests met that students submit. That's the number when you talk to folks, about 80%. And when you talk about small schools like Newmarket, like the district that I came from previously, it's actually harder to get to that 80% because you have more singleton courses. And particularly when you add electives, new electives that are also probably singletons or at most maybe 2 sections of a given course, what you do is you create these permutations that there's only one choice of. You know, if I'm in band and I'm in honors algebra, and I also want to take stained glass, the art stained glass course, well, it really depends where those fall in the master's schedule as to whether I'm going to be able to do that. Or can I take AP Calc and 2 other AP classes that I want, or are they running in places that I can't access them because of other courses? So anyways, that's very typical. So what happens is you build that schedule, you assign students through the system, it schedules to about 80%. And then you have a choice at that point. So you sort of look to see, you know, where those holes are. There's a little bit of moving courses around to see if you can get the 80% to 85% or 90%. And that's the sort of the March, April, May, probably beginning of June process. Now we'll back up at this point. One of the things that happens typically is that when you're in school and you get those requests and you make the decision of what's going to run versus what's not going to run and how many sections, then what you do is you go back to the students and you say, well, you've signed up for course X, Y, and Z. Course X and Y are running, but course Z will not run. So you're going to have to make another choice. what happens with the committee is once they've scheduled, the scheduling committee is they have a choice. Either they can start plugging kids into courses just to fill their schedule, or what's more typical and what you do when you're trying to meet students' individual needs is you say, we're going to reach out to them. We're going to send them what we have for their schedules, and then we're going to invite them back into make choices about their elective offerings. If they have conflicts in core areas that might be electives, then they're going to have to make some decisions about which ones they want to be in and what courses that they'll take to substitute for the ones that they can't get into. And that's pretty typical. So in June, that's what happened here is student schedules were mailed home. Some of those students were, had the core courses that were largely scheduled and electives that were scheduled, but a number of students had some, holes for various reasons. And actually, Jen had some numbers on that as to what, because we heard some rumbling about people were feeling as though the schedules were not as complete, but the numbers on that really are would reflect that really wasn't the case, except for a small number of students. So, Jen, would you share that data with the group?
Sure. So Dave's going to talk to you about the ticketing system and how we, have been reaching out to kids to have them work with us if there were incompletions in their schedules. So as he mentioned, we can run reports that show us kids that have schedules that are not completed. So far, I've resolved probably 50 to 60 scheduling tickets where we've resolved them and got kids full schedules. Currently, there are 92 incomplete schedules at the high school. However, 55 of those are seniors who need to choose some electives to fill a full 8 blocks. In the past, we've had some times where kids would have a free block in their schedule as seniors, and they would only take 6 courses. But because of our planning around COVID and where we're going to have to really keep track of where kids are, and we can't have a lot of exiting and entering the building, we are asking for seniors to fill their schedules with 8 courses. So I have 55 seniors who will need to choose additional electives in order to meet that. Remaining numbers, we have 11 students in special education who are either in our life skills or our behavior program that will need to be hand scheduled. So myself and Shayna Thorell, who's our new assistant principal for student services at the high school, will be working collaboratively to complete those schedules in the coming weeks. I also have 14 students who I'm awaiting to see how they complete summer school, if they pass their courses or if I have to reprogram them. So overall, that leaves us with 12 incomplete schedules for miscellaneous reasons. So for the most part, there are 12 incomplete schedules at the high school for which I don't have a valid answer right now. And I have been emailing students and families when I come across those and set up multiple Google meetings with kids and families to get those issues resolved. So really, there's only about, as I said, 12 that I would say are outstanding.
Thank you, Jen. And I would say, I did master scheduling for about 17 years, and it's a tough job, especially when we're trying to really tailor courses and interests and personalizing experiences for students. It's much easier to take all of that away and say, every 9th grader takes this, 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 and this. And that's a very different experience. That's not something that I would ever advocate for. It's not something that I would want to do. But the schedule itself and the number of offerings and the way you offer those can either be tailored to sort of make things more accessible and more schedulable, or it can be really complicated with permutation. So I would just say that I think there's still some work to do going forward, not for this upcoming year, but I think work in this upcoming year around looking at schedules. And I believe that was part of the plan earlier in this year, was to look at the schedule And I think there's certainly some work to do there in terms of whether the actual physical schedule is conducive to the type of scheduling, the type of access that we want to provide for kids as they make their choices with classes. So that's something I would imagine we'll be taking a look at as we go into next year. But I did want to, Jen has done a really good job reaching out to folks and getting these schedules, patched and having the kids pick those courses. So she's been really responsive to emails and the ticketing system. There was an earlier issue with the ticketing system as well, which I think we addressed. There was some issues with people being able to actually submit tickets, and we did resolve that when we found out that was an issue. So I think overall the master scheduling has gone very well. I think that the other thing that I wanted to mention is that for those kids that haven't picked classes, there is still a great deal of room remaining in elective courses. So it's not like we're dealing with jamming kids into full courses or anything. The expansion of the elective program has really created plenty of seats and plenty of opportunity. And that also speaks to the seniors who have selected 6 courses. It's not like there's not courses for them to go into. We have that expanded curricular offering in elective programming. So kids have choices, and we have plenty of seats available for kids. So that's good. Yeah.
Dave, could I just piggyback on one thing that you said?
Yes.
So as Dave went over the timeline, a lot of the work that I've been doing with kids this summer in terms of, emailing and meeting, kids entered their choices through Infinite Campus on March 12th, and then we never came back to school again. So this work that I'm doing, reaching out to kids individually now, the counselors and I would have done this throughout the spring so that we would have been in a little bit different place in June had we not had no real contact with the kids during that time. So that's one explanation for why some of the things were incomplete. And Dave's absolutely right. There's plenty of seats in really good electives. It's not just, nothing good that they want left to take. So I'm confident that we'll get people where they want to be. If there's anyone, at home that's watching, if your student still has an issue with their schedule or they want to make a change and they'd like to reach out, they can still use the ticketing system. I think the glitch was the link wasn't working. So sometimes they had to copy and paste it into their search bar. So you can try that. Or they can also just send an email to me at the school, and I'll be happy to meet with them or talk with them over email to get those things resolved.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, when I was going through the process of sort of how master scheduling works at the high school, I did, when I hit March, I meant to insert that. That was obviously the big hit, was that all of a sudden we weren't there and we didn't have that same access to kids. So in some cases, we weren't able to change their requests based on what we knew was running. So that was one place that sort of stumbled, if you will, but that was really due to COVID, and there was nothing we could do about that. Also, Jen was going to just give us a quick update on middle school schedules and how people could see that. So if you wanted to jump in on that, Jen.
Sure.
Can I just ask, this is Andy. Can I ask a question before you go on to middle school? Could you address the senior issue again? You mentioned that if they have to take 8 now, even though they only need 6, did you say something like that?
So in the past, we've allowed seniors to have senior privilege, which meant they only had to take 6 classes, and then if they had a free block in their schedule, they could leave and come back. So sometimes kids would have a whole B block. So they'd come in for their A, they'd leave, come back for C and D. Because we can't really allow comings and goings like that next year, or if kids had a free block, they might just go sit in the library or sit in the cafeteria. We need to know where everybody is this year. So we're not going to be able to, at this point, we don't think we're going to be able to allow that. So seniors will need 8 courses. Like in the past, sometimes they were allowed to have just 6. Yes.
So even if they didn't have D block filled, say they just had A, B, and C, they couldn't leave after C?
That's something that will have to be part of the sort of the details worked out between the reopening committee. So I can't really speak to that. And I think that's something that we still have to discuss as a reopening committee.
Yeah, I'll just, for me, as a new person coming in, so I'm asking this more as or stating this more as an inquiry question for me. Having kids not scheduled for part of the day is not even part of my thinking as a scheduler or as an educator. I mean, I think that we have in the past, there may have been some issues around course availability. I think might have been one of the reasons that this happened. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think there were not courses for kids to choose, as well as throughout the construction process, there was often not an adequate number of rooms to house kids in. So letting kids leave the building was sort of a solution to not having classes to offer them and then not having a place to put them.
So that senior privilege was something new in, say, the last 10 years, say, or has it been something historically at Newmarket High?
I can't really speak to that because I've only been here for a year. I don't know how long senior privilege has been a thing. It's not something that's necessarily a routine part of most high schools. But I think it's been here for a while, but I couldn't say for how long.
Yeah. And so, I actually had, I received an email from our student body president and who was advocating as well, because you can imagine seniors are very concerned about that. And, I've said, let's let the planning continue on what school's going to look like first. And then I'd be willing to sort of look at that with kids and discuss how that might work or make sense. But I need to understand it more. To me, there's questions that might go into other areas. And I don't, we don't need to spend time on that now, but I think when you let students come and go, there's always, I'm concerned about student safety first and foremost. And, I don't know if we even have a system in place for, knowing which students are leaving, coming and going, and what parent knowledge is of that and any other potential liability issues. Because these are things that have happened in the past, in my experience, but we actually moved away from those. And I don't know if that's not what we want to do here, that's fine. But I think I need to know more information about that. So we're asking that kids schedule fully at this point, but we can come back to that discussion as we know what the return to school picture is going to look like.
Well, that's exactly my point. We have to figure out if we're even going back to school, and then do we want kids in and out? It's all about the safety and security of our students and our staff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
that's our thinking
again.
as well.
Yeah, it's a global pandemic. So unfortunately, if we can get the kids back in the school, that's great news. So that's what we need to focus on, the positive stuff.
Yeah, and it will be much easier for us if we were to schedule everybody fully. And then if we decide that we can let students leave early, we can remove those classes versus leaving a hole there, then making a decision that they have to stay and us then have to scramble to fill it in. So I think it's easier to fill it and then potentially pull back versus to leave it open and then find ourselves behind the 8 ball.
So Amy, for our own seniors, we can blame Jen and Dave for this and then run.
Well, no, I'm
Thanks,
just
Mike.
asking because, I've heard some rumblings in the community and I didn't know that was something that had been, was going to be an issue, especially if they have only 3 classes, A, B, C, why they can't leave for the day after that. I don't think causes a issue, but I understand where you're coming from, Dave. But that's all. It was just a question.
It's sort of a prelude to the, what will be our discussion starting today and over the next meetings about, that there are a lot of things that we'll just need to accommodate for because of this particular situation. And there are so many moving parts to this. I mean, that's the common theme.
Right.
And this is just one of them, but the way you've described it, Jen and Dave, makes a lot of sense to me. Sounds practical. Meaningful, and I frankly wasn't aware of that history of how that may have developed in the first place. The gaps, open periods.
Yeah, in my experience, most times when schools have given these kind of privileges, it's actually been a way for, because they didn't have something to offer kids. So it looks like a great thing for kids and kids love it, but it's actually because the school isn't able to accommodate their needs.
And, I think there's, I would say if there's any students out there listening too who are really concerned about that, there are other ways to, sort of get senior privilege, and we're open to talking to seniors. Seniors feel like they've earned something and they want that, and I think there's maybe some other things we can talk about that can fill that void. Not to say that the other won't happen, but at this point, we're just asking everybody fill out that schedule completely, and let's see where it leads us. And right now, we're all so focused on so many other things right now that's not going to be a driver to putting together the schedule. But we can come back to it when the picture is clear.
Hey, Dave, good question. You may have covered this already, and I didn't hear it. Did some sort of email or communication go out to the? I think, Jen, how many did you say it was that still need to fill it out? Like,
there are 55 seniors
okay,
who are going to have to pick electives. I have emailed the vast majority of them. There's still a handful of kids that I haven't individually, because there are some seniors who had packed schedules. So there are still some kids that I have. I've been sort of sending the emails in phases, a chunk at a time. And there's a lot of kids that I have emailed who haven't replied to me. Maybe they're hoping I'll just go away. But we will, I'll keep reaching out to them. And if they, what I've been doing is when they email me, I'll say, these are the holes that you have, and these are the choices that are in those holes. Tell me what you would like to have. So I want to make sure that I'm not just assigning them to whatever is available. I want kids to have a choice and a say in picking something that, will be the most appealing to them.
great.
I could just go through and fill everybody's schedule and that would, be no problem. But I don't feel like, especially for seniors, that's the right thing to do. I did that with some, lower grade kids who left a hole. I'm like, well, you need your math class or you need your art class. And I would put it in. But we want seniors especially to choose a program that they want to take part in.
Great. Well, Dave and Jen, thank you for that clear explanation of how it works and also where we're at. And I'm sure the board appreciates it. And, I know the public will as well. Appreciate it. Any further questions on this?
Can we just take a moment and let Jen speak to the middle school schedules? Because I know that there was some interest in hearing where we're at with that before we shift gears.
Sure, I almost forgot. So our middle school schedules are complete for all of the core classes. Students and families can log in through Infinite Campus and you would be able to see your child's schedule. The core classes are complete, so that would be their math, ELA, science, and social studies. Any holes that you see in the middle school, that's where your unified arts courses would be. And some of our grouping on that is to be determined pending on, again, the COVID plan. If we're going to have students, in cohorts or clusters or pods or whatever, then we'll build those cohorts based on their academics, and then they would have to follow those through the unified arts. So the unified arts haven't been done simply because we don't know what they're going to look like, rather than completing that and then having to redo the whole thing when we know what the COVID plan is. We're waiting for that plan to be approved, and then we will go in and populate the kids in their UAs. It also might change some of when they meet on their core classes, because if they're in a cohort model, that's a whole different thing for us to redevelop.
And of course, the guidelines from the state are recommending that we move to the cohort. And we just got the guidelines a few days ago. So that will certainly play into our planning now that we have those documents. And I know that all the work groups have met and continue to meet and are reviewing those actively and taking where we can the guidance and using that as our starting place. And then if we need to do some modifications or where there's gaps in the guidelines, then that's where we're focusing our discussions. So again, thank you, Jen, Dave, Erica, and Sean for taking time this evening to share out these wonderful programs and our scheduling process and all that we're doing for the students here in Newmarket. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's nice to see you all too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right. So Dave Jacks? Yes, he is still with us, and he's next up on the agenda is the business operations, the financial year-end report for 2020. And we, in our materials, Dave put together a written summary and on a spreadsheet that we've been working with for the last few meetings here as well. Take it away, Dave.
Thank you. I think the way I want to start this is to go back to the meeting, our previous school board meeting, and just some remarks I had made at that point as to where we were essentially on June the 12th. At that point in time, we talked about having a target balance at the end of the year somewhere between 500 and 600,000. We knew we had $106,000 worth of revenues in excess of what we had predicted. So I'm going to set the stage there because really that's the last time you had received anything as a board in terms of being able to establish that. And now you have a new report that is significantly different, but very explainable. We now have as of June 30th, and I want to correct the June 12th note on the expenditures page. It should reflect June 30th. At least that's when we ran everything. We now have a balance of about $905,000 of unexpended monies from the expenditures. We also have the same 106,000 in revenues in excess. And we also know now that bond interest that will be available to go back to reduce the assessment is about $158,000. By the time we go to do it, it'll probably be a little more because we're gaining interest every day, albeit not so much as you once did, because all the interest that you received in the bond was predicated on the bond issue of about $38 million when it initially went out. So you have used up some of the interest on that bond via the warrant article process this past March, where you indicated that you would spend pieces of that accrued bond interest, and then whatever was left over really to close out the project would go back to reduce the assessment this year once we close out, if you will, close out the building project. So if we look at the areas of the budget that were under expended, we've got 362,000 in salaries approximately. And the bulk of that comes from substitutes and from paraprofessionals, either not hiring people, or in the case of substitutes, in March, we went out with, we moved away from using any substitute to speak of. And usually that's your high area of usage from March until June. That's when you get most of the substitutes in a year. And this year, of course, you didn't, so you would have money left there. There were also areas in salaries that we didn't expend. We either didn't hire people, knowing as a result of COVID-19, or the position opened and everything was put on hold. In addition to that, you have what, again, I don't know what the term that you're accustomed to. We sometimes call it a hiring delta, which is the difference that you have when you hire every year of the people that are leaving and then you replace them with folks. Sometimes you're able to replace those positions with folks that don't cost as much. And other times you end up replacing with folks that, depending on the position, that cost as much or sometimes even more. The other piece that I'm highlighting is about 676,000 in benefits. The bulk of that is coming from health insurance. And the new plan that I wasn't here for, but I'm assuming it happened about a year ago, that was crafted between the board and negotiations. From what was budgeted and then what is utilized, there was some $670,000 worth of savings in the health insurance. So that's a pretty significant amount, but that really brings up, and it certainly is. It's a very good thing, particularly as the year progresses, and it'll go forward. So it'll be money. It is monies that you won't have to spend in the future. The next piece is transportation and tuition. I think Erica spoke a little bit about that earlier. Tuitions for some significant placements. We had some savings there. And then transportation in general, around in the special education in particular, but also in regular ed transportation as a result of COVID-19 and the idea of not using the buses, but we did continue to service the contract to some extent so that when we did come back to school, we would have bus drivers and everybody available as we go into the fall. So then if we move down to the next piece, pieces that really are significant here are what I call other purchase services. We overexpended in that area. That really is your legal account. I think everybody's pretty much aware that the legal account is significantly overspent. And the other piece is, and this is kind of a unique situation, there's another one in contracted services. And the issue there is in particular, the position that I filled for the year and was a position that usually is found in a salary line item. However, when you contract out to a company such as MRI, whom I work for, the charges come into contracted services as opposed to salaries. So you'll see a savings in salaries, if you will, and you'll see an over expenditure here in contracted services, and the bulk of that came from that position. So at the end of the day, we're looking at, we've got about $905,000 in unexpended expenditures. You've got another $106,000 in revenues, and you've got another $158,000 in interest. It comes out to about $1.1 million of monies that initially will be used in the calculation of what is going to go back. And the last piece is you're going to have to reduce out $50,000 of a transfer, which was warrant Article 8, some $50,000 that moves to a trust fund. So that'll be deducted from that. I'm not going to get to a bottom line this evening, and I think that when Susan spoke earlier about the audit is taking place as we speak. They will take all of these figures and they will then bring it back so that we get to a point probably hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll have an unassigned fund balance established, which will mean we know what we will use or what we will be giving back, if you will, at the end of this year when we go to set the tax rate in October. So it is going to be something less than what's on here. The other piece that's not on here is that I think in 2014, the district voted a warrant article. I think it's 198:4B, and what it is, it's 2.5% of the net assessment of the district is allowed to be put aside annually in case you have an emergency. If you don't use it, it just rolls back into be returned, and you only have to vote on that once. You did in 2014, so the last couple of years you've had around approximately $400,000 set aside annually to utilize that going forward. I don't think I know you didn't utilize it this year, and I'm not sure you utilized it a year ago, but it goes into there, and it's all part of this, the last piece that goes into the calculation of the unassigned fund balance. This is a very unusual year. I don't have to tell anybody that, and expenditures are not certainly not where we thought they would be. On the other hand, moving forward with the uncertainty of what's coming up, if you have a little bit more, I think last year you gave back $538,000 to be used to reduce taxation. If it's something more than that, I think this is probably a good year to have that coming back. I think that we're not certain yet what FY21 will bring us, nor are we certain of all revenues, if you will, going forward in terms of folks' ability to pay taxation and so forth. And so certainly anything, and it won't be I'm guessing it won't be a whole lot different than it has been in the past. It probably will be more, but I think this is a good year to move forward with this. And from the standpoint of the school district, the administration, and of the school board, I think that you've looked at this budget and you've handled it prudently as you can. And I think we're looking at something going forward that's manageable, as opposed to the other side thing is really not having.
As all town managers are, about and will hopefully
One of the pieces that revenue spikes this year. When you're looking for a
that moving forward. No, that is not the case. There's monies for as long as I've been on the board and before, and we're not going to stop that.
So if I could make one point, I just want to caution folks. I'm glad the auditors are here. I'm glad they're here early. The 1.1 million is not going to be, I don't believe, the number that we give back. It'll be something less than that, but it will not be 600,000 either. So I'm going to let them just ferret through the process that they go through at the end of the year, and rather than to to bank that that's going to be the actual number. Within a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, we'll know what that number is and we'll be able to share it with you.
Thanks for clarifying with that, Dave. I did not mean to give the
No.
that was going to be the number, but so I appreciate that.
Any other questions from the board for Dave? If there's none, the next item on is the, Dave, I think, is the encumbrance approval.
Yes, I don't know if you've done this in the past. This is more around what I would term transparency. Your auditing firm, your firm, Plotzik and Sanderson, actually looks for this during the audit every year, which means that all of the encumbrances that we are going to carry forward from this year, and those could be carried forward because we did some business at the end of the year, and or there was some business that was not completed, is going to be completed next in this next year. But what your auditors like to see is that the board takes a vote on this and approves the bottom line number moving forward. In all of these encumbrances that we're talking about this evening, if they are not spent on the items that they are put in there for, then that money is left there and it becomes part of the unreserved fund balance, the unassigned fund balance in a year. So it's not as if you can interchange this for something else. The purpose is there. So what we have in front of us this evening is approximately, on your report, and I'm going to make one amendment as we go through here, but in your initial report, there was some $404,000, $404,697 to purchase orders to roll forward. So what happens is we take this, if this is approved, you will essentially add $404,000 to your next year's budget. It'll increase your budget, and we'll bring the funds that we had forward so they don't go away. And you do this every year. The difference, I think, this year is, again, back to the auditors, they like the transparency. We have to talk about, isn't something.
So in essence, Dave, these encumbrances are things we've already committed to in the prior fiscal year. Here we're just rolling it forward.
That is correct. What we've done is all these, the list you have in front of you shows the account number, the object code, the PO number that's out there, the vendor, and unless the vendors are solid, unless something happens during a bid process or a process that we might go a quote process, something changes, and then you have a description of what it is, the amount of money that's out there, and pretty much what we would look for here tonight is a vote of the board on the bottom line. I'm also going to I'd ask you to go to the very last item, which is transfer to food service. And you notice that there is a $63,000 purchase order there. I'm going to ask you to, I would like to adjust that to $28,000 because as we went through and as we reviewed all of the revenues that have come in, it appears as though food service is going to be, has a loss that's somewhere under $28,000. So we're going to use the number that we had appropriated in your budget each year. You have put as a line item in your budget $28,000 to cover food service deficit. Historically, it's very difficult to make money in food service. When we looked at this year, I don't think when I reviewed this before, I had all of the revenues in play. We had significant revenues come in as a result of COVID-19. You wouldn't think so, but everything was treated as free and reduced, so, or as free, everything has come in. So I'm going to reduce that number, recommend that we reduce that number to 28,000, and the new bottom line number for this would be 369,697.20. And for those of you that are following this along, that would mean I now have another 35,000 to add into the 905,000 that we talked about previously.
Thanks for that explanation, Dave. Any questions from the board?
I do have a couple of questions, and unfortunately, Dave, you probably won't know the answer to some of these. So there's electric for the sign. I hadn't realized when we voted on the sign that electric wasn't included. Are there any other costs that were that we should expect for the sign?
I do know about the sign. The sign is coming out of the you had a donation, if you will, for the sign itself. The bid for the sign, I think, came in around $25,000, significantly less than what we thought. This here is the bid did not include bringing the electricity via the conduit and all that good stuff and the setup in there. So this is what that represents.
Gotcha.
Dave, can I just,
On that point, I actually, Gary, I had understood that the electrical was already, and Dave, you may not know this off the top of your head, so it's not a big deal, but I understood that work was already done quite some time ago.
As I understand it, Mike, the conduit is in the ground. What's not done is running the wiring and the connections and everything that have to go to the sign. There's nothing going through the conduit. It's just a raceway at this point.
I see. Okay. So, all right.
Dave, this is Amy. I had a question on that electrical work. Was there a bid out for that? $7,937.
I don't know. I can't tell you because it's
kind of high. I don't know if could we look into that, because it seems pretty high.
Absolutely.
I'm not an electrical engineer, but I'm just wondering if we had bid it out.
I will go back and look into that. Apologize for not having that answer. I don't know the answer to it, so I'm not going to even pretend I do.
Okay.
Dave, has that money already been earmarked? We've already committed to spending that money with Martineau Electrical, right?
We have a purchase order out there as we speak, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
And then
what I can do is I will check on this, and again, we can report back on it and go from there.
Thank you.
And then I had a question about, it looks like we spent $4,000 in hoses at Lowe's. Is this just a replacement item, or do we normally spend?
No, so I do know the answer to this one. This is an issue around timing. It's an issue around all the work that was done in the schools, and then a weather event that happened this summer that after everything was there, partially started, and then we got a heat wave and no water. So the decision was made. A discussion at we had a discussion with the building. Folks from the building committee, I believe Mike was involved in this at one point, to say, listen, you've got to have water out there. So this is as a result of new areas that were seeded that without water are not going to survive, and then you are just going to pour, you're going to pour more into it. So we elected to go with enough sprinklers, timers, and hoses at those areas to kind of get us through this time. This is not a long-term solution because this is a manual. It's not like having a sprinkler system. These are simply hoses that run over the ground.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess there's no one else has any questions. The carpeting and the reno, is that, did we already vote on approving to do the reno with SAU? I mean, I would love everybody over there deserves a spruced up office, but I'm concerned about $40,000.
So the money's here. We're in the process here of trying, and this includes the painting of offices, the carpeting. There is some renovations on in a couple of areas where walls are going to be taken down, a conference area, and you have new folks moving into the office. You have a new assistant superintendent. So there's a whole host of things going in. I'll be absolutely honest with you. It's not something we've even started at this point because it wasn't just possible given everything else that's going on. If going forward, I suspect that this will be done at some point in the year when we're at a break. If you don't get some of it done in the summer, you get as much in the summer, but then as you go forward, you just try to find natural breaks because it involves displacing your folks for a few days at a time.
Yeah,
I think Gary, I think it's warranted. I think an upgrade, and I think we think 40,000 is a number that will take care of it. If it's less, the money will come back anyway. It can't be used for anything else.
I can attest to the rugs definitely needing to be replaced, if nothing else. Thank you.
Dave, thank you for that. Amy, did you have a question? You're off of mute. No?
Oh, no, I'm good. Thank
Okay.
you.
If you have questions while it's fresh in front of us, maybe we ought to, because Dave is asking for a motion, maybe we ought to do that right now, and I would seek a motion to approve the FY20 encumbrance approval in the total amount of $369,697.20. Is that right, Dave?
That is the number with the adjustment to food service, yes.
So moved.
Make a motion.
I'll second Gary Swanson.
Okay, so Kim made the motion, Gary seconded. If there's no further discussions, let's take a roll call vote. Mike Kennison, aye.
Elizabeth McKinney, aye.
Kim Shelton, aye.
Gary Swanson, aye.
Amy Tilton, aye.
That motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Dave, again. I guess, Jana, we next have the technology bid. We got some additional materials for that.
I'll take
Yeah.
that one. I can do that. Yeah, so I had sent you an email. We had gotten some pricing in order to outfit the rest of our student population with devices in preparation for going fully remote at some point next year. So as you know, we have devices on hand for grades 3 through 12, but when COVID hit, we got the last 100 devices that were available, and that, you know, provided third graders with that, you know, to access their remote learning. So what you have before you here is, you know, a bid that would allow us to buy iPads for all pre-K through grade 1, and then the same type of a device that we bought for the third graders, which are touchscreen Chromebooks for grade 2 and the grade 1-2 classes. So these are, I mean, if with your approval tonight, we can go ahead and place the order. And based on my conversations with Jason, the iPads could be here in 4 weeks. Of course, this is always subject to change because everyone else is trying to get their orders in. So time is really of the essence here, which is why I asked Jason to get some pricing immediately so that we could try to get a little bit ahead of the curve on this. So that's the story about why this is before you. Again, you had given me the authority to go ahead and enter into contracts on your behalf, but since the board meeting was tonight, I figured instead of me signing it, I would just bring it forward to you. Also, this is for next year, and you know, when we had talked about this, me signing on your behalf, it was to move forward with projects that were already in the queue. So for those 2 reasons, I have this here for you to consider tonight. We have $1,000 in the budget for devices. This comes to be in excess of that $100,000. And just like we had happen this year, there's going to be expenses for PPE and other things because of the environment we're in that we did not budget for. But there will also be areas in which we will not necessarily need to be spending money that will offset this. But as opposed to targeting something now before we have our full plan together, and then have to transfer money back out of a line that we move to cover this, you know, I would offer to you that we withhold making transfers until after all of the expenses are encumbered. We also have access to some grants. We need to write them, but we want to leverage the grants in a way so that we're taking advantage of the different pockets that might be available to us. So if we, so for all those reasons, I would ask that you allow us to go ahead and move forward with this purchase, and that you know, you waive the requirement of your policy for identifying the specific line items that will cover it until after, you know, we get through the school opening, and then we can mindfully, you know, go through exactly, you know, how each part will be funded from the various sources available to us.
And Susan, if we say yes to this, basically, if you see that the PPE, if you see the stuff that we need, if you're able to get that, what's the plastic that we're looking for? Everybody's trying to find it right now.
Glass.
Yes. I mean, if we do this, then if you see it, or if Jana sees it, we can purchase it. You can let us know. We can keep track of it. It would be better if you could just buy it so we don't have to wait for the next meeting. Am I getting that right?
Well, I think that's, you know, in this case, I was just asking for this particular purpose, but I hear exactly what you're saying, and it is a concern I have. You know, Jana's out there trying to see if she can find all kinds of different options for tables and or desks, and she was telling me the other day she found 50 that we can get for free, but we have to go pick them up. But that's not going to be the case, you know. I know that you know, we're going to have to buy PPE. We're going to have to buy some face shields and such, and it's a matter of if we do find them, we do. You're good. It's a very good point. You know, we need to be able to just, you know, move forward. Otherwise, we'll lose the opportunity. So yeah, I mean, yeah, thank you for that. That would be most helpful in getting us to move forward and ready for the school year if the board was, you know, willing to consider that.
Well, I think we should think about that as a board, about allowing that. Because again, if we're going to open up, if all of this, if all the moving parts come together, and all of a sudden we just don't have the equipment, we're not going to open up. So
if I may add something too, this is Jana. I just wanted to add that Elizabeth, you are speaking my reason I wake up at 2 a.m. every night during the week, because I'm on the operations committee and I'm looking at some of these things. And while we've done a ton of work and we think we found a bunch of resources, we have scoured the planet to find what we think we need to cobble these things together. We actually think we have somebody that's going to be able to make us our sneeze guards for certain ones of our tables, but we can't have them made for all of them because the lead time's too long. So we're walking a very delicate line. And so if I could just voice, you know, what Susan said, I very much appreciate you thinking in those terms, because we sometimes don't have a lot of options as to where we can get these things from. And if we have to wait because the amount is over the 5,000, you know, that we need, that we were hoping to do, or over the 10,000 on some of these things, you know, it's going to be difficult, and we may lose the items and not have them.
Mike, can we retroactively approve proposals?
I think yes, Gary. The simple answer is yes. But I mean, this discussion brings up a good point, which is a couple of good points. First of all, just to finish, I was going to make I'll circle back to your point, Gary, but going back to something Dave been saying along, that there may be possibilities to recover some of this, you know, some of these costs. And I would argue, Susan, that what you're describing is we might not have otherwise planned for this year. So in other words, it's legitimately a COVID-related expense. and I think it can be put in that bucket for potential recovery. But Gary, to your point, and it's not really on the agenda tonight, although Susan has brought it up before, it's really come to a head now, is our bidding policy. The $10,000 cap is low to begin with relative to surrounding districts. Most of them are at 25. But I am wondering, as a practical matter, and let's discuss it, that we don't want to be hamstrung. We don't want Jana to say tomorrow that she's come across some needed stuff, yet she can't make the decision because we got to wait on a board meeting. I don't think we want to be in that position, but I'd like to hear other board members' thoughts on it.
One of the things that, going back to what Susan said at this thing in front of us in terms of this new technologies, Susan was saying that she senses that at some point we're going to go remote next year. I tend to agree with that without any scientific knowledge, but I tend to think that's what's going to happen at some point. One of the things that helped us in the spring was the amount of technology that we had in the hands of students when we went remote as compared to other districts. So that, in my mind, this is a necessary purchase for the future. In terms of the bigger picture, and to your point of staying up at night, I think you're not alone in that. I constantly am trying to think of all the moving parts as we just move towards getting people in the classroom looking through the lens of safety and what is going to be required to do that. And then I think, what if it is 1 day time to get the plexiglass and we miss the opportunity, we can't get it until way past the time that we need it, and then that hamstrings the whole thing. So my feeling is that given the fact that we are in unprecedented waters in ways that none of us could have imagined, it might make sense to look at these levels of approval so that we do not miss out on any opportunities.
Well, we can retroactively approve them at least for the summer, and then reconsider it when we have time to really think things through. I can't think of any reason not to, but it's kind of
I sort of think along those same lines. I mean, Gary, we are in an unprecedented time, and we can do it moving forward and then discuss it whenever we're out of the frying pan to address that more thoroughly. I think that's
yes, yeah, that's what I'm thinking too, Kim.
Well, I think one way we can handle this, because we very much trust in the professionalism of our team here, is that I would propose that we entertain a motion to waive that minimum, or is it minimum or maximum? The $10,000 amount on the bid policy, through the duration of until September 1st, and we can reconsider it then. But we're going to need to be moving on things. We will. I mean, we're going to be approving a high-level proposal next week, and things are going to happen fast. They may even happen before then. So that would be my recommendation.
Mike, I love that idea.
But again, if we can do them retroactively,
yeah,
we at this point.
We can, but I mean, and I guess it's semantics. But I mean, what I'm saying is that if we don't waive the policy, it's there, and Jana and Susan are in the position of they're arguably not following policy. But if we waive it, then they can go ahead and do it. And of course, at the next meeting, they'll present whatever it is, and maybe even real time as it happens, just for information purposes, and not to add to their plate. But and then we can take a vote on it then. And I just think that this is what we do as a board. We adapt to and make policy that makes sense.
So you could reducing or eliminating the minimum, the maximum altogether, or raising?
Yeah. Well, yes. In essence, allowing Susan and her team to make purchases without being hamstrung by the $10,000 board approval bid approval requirement that's currently in our policy. Because
would it make people feel better if we called it COVID related? Would it make if we said COVID related?
Yeah, and I don't have it memorized, but I know that there's an emergency exception to our policy.
Yeah.
Anyways, so that concept is already baked in there. But what's not in there is just sort of this functional thing that, you know, we're not going to have the time to schedule board meetings just to approve things because we'll have missed the boat.
It really is a situation like that. It's like, you know, with this approval tonight for these, we are placing a PO tomorrow morning, you know? And I know when I got this price on Monday that the clock was ticking. But, you know, I'm trying to honor and build trust with you. And what I had said when you approved the waiver the last time was that it was going to be for the things that were already on the docket for warrant articles and such, and this was not that, but you know, this idea that we'd be able to react in real time, because it's not a matter of getting pricing with this COVID stuff. It's either we do this or somebody else is going to get it, and it's whoever can get the order in first is the winner. And we've had things, and this is one of the reasons why you have, you'll see, the electrostatic cleaners. Those have been, we ordered those back in the first week of March. You know, some of this stuff is back-ordered stuff that they keep changing the ship date for us. And so for us to be able to like really get out there right now, if Janet, you know, has this contact for plexiglass, and, you know, saying yes, and here's the PO, it's not like we can get quotes, you know? It's not a situation where you can. It's a situation where it's this is what you got, and if we want to be able to have half a chance of opening school, then we're going to have to be able to, you know, move quickly. So anyways, thank you for the consideration. I think the other policy too that comes into play here is the policy of the $5,000 requirement for identifying a line item transfer if we're going to spend out of a line that isn't funded. And I think it's those two policies right now that if you can, you know, temporarily waive, and then we can come back, like I said, in, you know, after we get school open, and we can mindfully sit down and say, okay, we have these grants and we're going to pay for this, you know, this money's going to come out of, you know, the federal FEMA money, and this can come out of this. But we can't like do things as neatly as we would otherwise be able to if we weren't under the constraints that we're under right now. So I really do appreciate you considering that, because it'll help us out a lot. You know, one way the board can help support the work that we're doing and help us open school. So thank you very much for thinking about this.
Susan, this is Amy. Can I ask you on, you just mentioned FEMA money. Do you have any idea what that would look like as far as receiving it?
Susan, I can take that if you're not familiar with it, or I do know about that.
Yeah, you're closer to it than I am.
Right. So that's a great question, Elizabeth. The FEMA monies, if I had to categorize the CARES ESSER money that has been given to schools and compare it and contrast it to the FEMA monies, the CARES Act allows schools a whole lot more flexibility. We can use that for remote learning. We can use that for devices. We can use that for PPE. We can use it for cleaning. FEMA is very restricted. It really is more of an act that was, I believe, aimed more at municipalities who had perhaps ambulance services and police services. And while there are certain things that we certainly can pursue under FEMA, it's much, much more limited. However, that said, the things like our electrostatic cleaners, our disinfectant, our gloves, our masks, all of those things that are PPE do meet the requirement of that FEMA project. So that's kind of what, I guess, just reinforcing what Susan said, by allowing us to not process these line transfers right now and kind of looking at the big picture, we can maybe decide which pieces we're going to put under CARES ESSER based on what we need for those other parts that we know we have another funding source for, if that makes sense, to kind of work it together rather than saying from the outside, okay, I'm going to lock up this money from ESSER to buy these electrostatics, and then say, well, wait a minute, hold on, we actually need that for devices or hotspots or something else that we could get under that act. So the application date for FEMA is open right now. There is no closed date for that. which allows us to really look at this summer and kind of aggregate all of this stuff. And as Dave, I think Dave probably explained to you earlier, we have actually created general ledger accounts in our chart of accounts that are specific. So we are tracking these things specifically related to COVID in the different areas of our operations. So we can extract that data and really look at just those pieces to determine how we might fund them.
So I've got
Oh, sorry.
yeah,
I just,
I've got policy DJE open. It's the bidding requirement policy, and if I had more skill, I'd put it up on the screen, but I can't. But it somewhat addresses what we're talking about. It says that, you know, and I'm going to paraphrase that, you know, when supplies, equipment, and goods in excess of $10,000, you have to go out and get competitive bids, except, and there's 5 exceptions, and one of those is when the school board determines that an emergency exists requiring immediate procurement of supplies. An emergency for purposes of this section shall be limited to situations arising from an unavoidable casualty, disaster, which I think COVID kind of falls into that definition. So, I mean, it's contemplated here anyways, but what I would suggest, again, for clarity's sake, is that we waive this bidding requirement because, for instance, if Jan is looking for plexiglass, she doesn't have the time to put it out for bid, to get free bids. You know, when she finds what she needs, she's got to grab it. And I would say that we can, you know, we can narrow this to COVID-related stuff. And again, I trust in our professionals.
It sounds like, based on that policy, and understood it, but that we don't even need to amend the policy. We tell them that it's an emergency, or we can determine it.
We can, I guess, Gary, to be technical, yeah. I mean, it says when the school board determines that an emergency exists requiring immediate procurement of supplies, and I guess we could say that
Yeah,
COVID satisfies,
well, saying that, yeah.
COVID satisfies that definition, and therefore we're waiving the $10,000 bid, waiving the bidding requirement altogether for such purposes.
Yeah, I could definitely support that.
You had a thought?
No, I would concur. I mean, if it's in the policy, I'm not comfortable changing policies, but if it's in the policy and all we're doing is activating that part of the policy, then I'm certainly comfortable with it.
if this is not an emergency time, I don't know what is going to be.
Exactly. It may be the definition of an emergency.
Let's hope we don't find out what an emergency is if this isn't it.
Yeah, really.
Valid point, Jen, valid point.
So I guess just go back to the fund transfers. Jana, is it my understanding that without the ability to transfer funds, we're limiting ourselves to that spending, or we're limiting ourselves in the ability to perhaps collect grant money or FEMA money?
No, it's a little bit different than that. So as a school board, you have bottom line spending authority basically within your budget. We technically we can't spend more than was appropriated by the voters, but we do have the authority to move money between lines. That's a state statute, right? But the district has chosen to put something in place saying that when we transfer money from one purpose to another that's over 5,000, the district policy says that we need to process a form and make the school board aware of where we're taking the money from and where we're moving it to, so that there's transparency and visibility. Some districts do it differently. That's not a state requirement, that's a Newmarket requirement.
And is the ability to do that over $5,000, or inability for you to do that over $5,000, causing an issue at this time?
Only from the standpoint of we don't always know what we have to get next. So I could move money from one purpose to put it over to the equipment line, but then I could turn around and say, well, you know what, that equipment line, I'm actually going to submit to FEMA. I'm actually going to put it in there. So I'm not really appropriated monies. I'm going to spend it, but then I'm going to get a revenue and that's going to offset. So, we're kind of playing Jenga a little bit, moving various pots of things around to figure out how to best meet the need of the district. And that, well, we certainly, you will see any transfer we make, because if I don't process a budget transfer, you're going to see a big old negative number, in the various lines. But what we can do, if that's something that you're willing to consider, if we make those cases where we are actually running a line into the negative, even though we know we can cover it elsewhere in the budget, we certainly can compile that information and bring that information to you to say, here's what we did, these lines right now. And in fact, I think we did it last year with all of the COVID lines, didn't we, Susan and Dave? We ran them all negative.
We ran negative, but what we did was we came and made the board aware of it. So an example, like when we hired Dave and the consultant, you know, we came to the board made the decision that we were going to do it that way. You know, we had several positions like that. What we didn't do, and what was hard last year, is because we didn't know what underpinned the numbers, we couldn't, you know, at that time say this dollar amount includes the expenses for the following exact items. Like this year going into it, we do have that. We didn't have that last year. So transferring money without knowing really what was, you know, what the items were that comprised that dollar value, you know, it didn't seem prudent to start transferring money kind of willy-nilly to cover things. We had to make a decision, you know, around, you know, December to just abandon trying to tie out all those particular lines, because it was not something possible to do. So then we went to the bottom line and we just kept track holistically. I had money over here, like Dave said, on the salary line, because I'm not hiring an employee, I'm contracting out, so the contracted service line is going to be high and the salary line is going to be low. So we identified it broadly, but we didn't do the physical transfers. And I'm suggesting, having managed large amounts of money for a good portion of my life, that you can get yourself into a real mess if you start transferring money in and out of accounts without looking at it from a broader standpoint. If we can just have until we open school and we identify what expenses are best, you know, that we can get reimbursement for in FEMA, knowing that it's only 75% reimbursement, then we're coming up with the 25% we have to cover here. Then we have the CARES Act money, and then that money is best spent for this. And then we have things in our budget we're not going to spend money in because we know now, for example, and this is just an example, it's not true yet, but it happened in the spring where athletics was canceled. And with athletics was canceled, then we had transportation money. I don't have all that information right now. And so to start moving money from one place and then saying, oh my God, now I need it back over there, then we're going to wind up with transferring, and it's going to make it really difficult to trace things for the remainder of the year. So I'm just recommending that, for sanity and clarity, that we just keep track of it and we make all of our adjustments, you know, in September, after we have time to know exactly what our expenses are for opening, you know, what COVID expenses we have, what things we plan for that we're not going to need money for, to the best of our knowledge, and that we reconcile it at that time.
I guess I'm confused then, if the idea is to note that we're going to be doing these transfers in the future, what does us spending the $5,000 cap do for, how does that assist us?
My understanding was that without having you make this waiver, we can't execute a contract because we don't have an appropriation sufficient on a line item in order to be able to enter into the contract.
I see. So it is a by line item that you have to have sufficient funding. I see. That's the part I wasn't getting. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Can I have, Janet, on the CARES Act, is there like a cap that they're going to reimburse back to us? Like Susan just said, 75% for FEMA.
Yep, that's what it is. It's not 100%. Our CARES ESSER Act, that's 100%.
Oh, that's 100%.
Yeah, that's 100%. If they approve the activity, we can get all of it back. If we have the money,
but there's not a cap, like say.
Oh well, we only have, I believe, 108,000, right, Susan? I can't see the grant right now, but.
Yeah, it's about 110,000 in CARES Act money, but then FEMA is more of a reimbursement program, right, as opposed to a grant program. And FEMA and MEMA, they're all reimbursement programs. We spend first, and then if they accept them, you know, because they meet their criteria, then they send us, you know, a reimbursement for up to 75% 50% of whatever those accepted expenses are.
Right, and the CARES ESSER Act works just opposite in that you have to get the activity approved first before you spend. And then after you spend the money, they will, they reimburse you for the money you spent, but you have to kind of get the approval up front for its specific things.
Okay, thank you.
And the CARES Act money, deadline for that September. And so, and the FEMA money is open. So that's why it's like we want to accumulate all of these expenses and then have a moment to sit down and say, okay, this is CARES Act, because instead of spending money out of the CARES Act, that, as Jana has said so well, is very flexible, that we make sure that we leverage, the FEMA money, because it's really targeted. Like, I think plexiglass, for example, is an example of something that can be purchased out of that. Our electrostatic sanitizing stuff to clean the buildings and sanitize the buildings, that would be FEMA. Now, we could use CARES Act, we could use our budget, but I mean, if we're going to get 75% on the dollar back from, that, then it's only 25% out of the budget, or 25%, and that way we can leverage. I would say, taxpayers should be the court of last resort, not first resort. But to do that in this, it's really a little bit of a, we got to hold back for a minute in order to be really strategic and take advantage, maximize our opportunities here.
Right. Thank you.
I think we've gotten a little far afield off the technology bid, which is fine, but I just wanted to loop back on that real quick. A couple real. I assume the carrying case order is just because we didn't get enough carrying cases when we originally ordered the other Chromebooks, because it's 430 carrying cases versus 120.
Yes.
Yeah.
We didn't have those available, so he's backfilling a bit there.
Yep. And then we normally wouldn't be a one-to-one down to pre-K, obviously. I assume that this is a one-time order and we won't be replacing Chromebooks for children down to third grade in the future, or?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, that's not, no. This is.
In other words, Gary, this is very much a COVID-related expense.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I know.
I don't want little kids sitting in front of a device. I don't want anyone sitting in front of a device for the majority of their learning experience. But there's real reasons why you need a tool like that at the higher levels. But this is really access to education situation.
Remote, yep, absolutely.
My screen is locking up on me every once in a while. Is that happening to you guys?
Not so far.
No.
Okay, so I don't think I'm missing anything big. It only happens for 2 or 3 seconds at a time, but.
Well, you made it fair, but other than that, you didn't miss anything.
Gotcha. Hey, any other thoughts on all of this?
Well, do we need to approve this bid now, or are we going to do that in approvals?
I think
Either way.
I think we can do that. We might as well do it while it's right in front of us.
And do we want to make a motion to do the policy?
I would suggest
acknowledge that.
Yeah, because time is of the essence. We probably won't meet again, and we'll talk about this later until next week. And when we consider late next week, when we consider the proposal from the steering committee, so we can move forward with the reopening plan. I think a motion to approve the, I don't know what you have it titled, Susan, but technology bid presented to us, and I don't have the amount.
It's remote learning Chromebook iPad purchase, and the total was $132,000. I didn't do it all the way up. I just said to the thousands. Let me check real quick.
I get 129,890, just under 130.
Okay. Does somebody want to make a cogent, clear motion?
What was the price again?
139.
I get 129,890. Sorry about that. I didn't know you were talking to me.
That's okay. I make a motion to allow the Chromebook iPad purchase of 129,890.
I know this doesn't make a big deal, but I get 129,920. It's only $30 difference, but I'm getting 86,700 for the iPads, for the Chromebooks, 43,220. So that would be 129,920, right?
I was going off the total, which said 86,670 for the iPad.
Okay. You know what? You're right.
I think he might have rounded up in the body of it, but on the back, on the detail.
Okay. Yeah.
But actually, you know what? Just to be safe, let me run a tape and make sure. I'm going to run a tape on his detail. I get it. Let me do that again. Maybe I fat fingered. I actually get 86,668, which makes sense because one of his numbers ends in an 8.
Yeah, I think he just rounded up.
I think he did too. So maybe let's go with what you recommended. Let's just say the 86,700 because it's pretty close.
Right. That's fine.
86,700, and then the 43,220. That comes to 129,920.
All right, I'll amend my motion to 129,920.
Seconded, Gary Swanson.
Any further discussion? If there's none, let's take a roll call vote. Mike Kennison, aye.
Elizabeth McKinney, aye.
Kim Shelton, aye.
Gary Swanson, aye.
Amy Tilton, aye.
Approved unanimously. And then I would also ask for a motion to, under our policy DJE, which is the bidding requirements, for the board to declare an emergency under item 2, defining what an emergency is, for COVID-related expenses, waiving essentially the bid, not waiving, but invoking that exception to the bidding requirement. And I would say that, so they're not up against the wall, that we extend that to our last meeting in October and we can revisit it then. Does that make sense? Because I think, some of this stuff we may need to do things as we go along and we don't want to have to be stuck waiting for a meeting.
So moved, Gary Swanson.
Second, Kim Shelton.
Any further discussion?
No, I think this is going to help. I think this is going to be a good thing for our community.
I think so. So if there's no further discussion, all those in favor by roll call vote. Mike Kennison, aye.
Elizabeth McKinney, aye.
Kim Shelton, aye.
Gary Swanson, aye.
Amy Tilton, aye.
Finally, under our policy DBJ, which is the transfer of appropriations policy that Jana referred to, again, I would propose that somebody make a motion to waive the $5,000 line item transfer approval requirement, again, until our last meeting in October.
So moved.
Second, Kim Shelton.
Is there further discussion?
I just would ask that we get a report at that time, or once those funds have been transferred.
Absolutely, and around that time, we would be giving you a quarterly report, status report of the budget anyway, so.
Yeah, that's true.
Do all that, yep.
And I just suspect as a practical matter too, as we go through our successive meetings, between now and school opening, that we'll hear about anything substantial. So I appreciate those, the suggestion that we do this. Hopefully it makes things easier and gets us to where we need to be. That motion's on. Is there any other discussion or thoughts?
When is it effective till again? Did you say, Mike?
I would say, Amy, maybe how about make it our last meeting in October? And I don't know when that date is off the top of my head, but that probably will give us sufficient time. And if we need to extend it, we can revisit at that point.
Makes sense.
Hearing no further discussion, by roll call vote, all those in favor, please say aye. Mike Kennison, aye.
Elizabeth McKinney, aye.
Kim Shelton, aye.
Barry Swanson, aye.
Amy Tilton, aye.
That motion is approved unanimously. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and I think that's going to help. And I've lost my agenda. What's the next item up?
I think it's with HVAC preventative maintenance, everyone's favorite topic. First of all, thank you very, very much for considering those two last votes. I really do appreciate it. I know I speak on behalf of my business office. We really appreciate that flexibility, and I think we definitely need to be able to react quickly. So very, very timely. Thank you. So the HVAC preventative maintenance was a process that started actually back before COVID hit. There was a bid that was put out. COVID hit. They stopped the bid process because no one was sure how that was going to work with opening bids and such. It was re-put out again in the spring, and Dave may have a date for that. It happened before I came in district. The bids came back in, and we were in the process of evaluating them, or the team was in process of evaluating them. And one of the bidders claimed that there was an addendum that was put out to that bid after the fact. He claimed that he had not received that addendum and therefore was contesting the bid. So in order to do things fairly and properly, we rejected all of those bids and then put them out again. So this bid was already out by the time I joined July 1st. So since that time, we have the new facilities person, Dave Creasy, that has joined me. And so as these bids came back in, the HVAC preventative maintenance is one of those services that's a little bit difficult to quantify because there are so many price points within what they do. There's a certain price point for service calls. There's a certain markup on materials. There's an annual contract. And then, of course, there's other factors that that you should probably we should consider given the importance of HVAC preventative maintenance. We're going into a period with COVID where recommendations have changed relative to filtering in our buildings and fresh air and all sorts of things. So especially at this time, we felt it was important to give some weight and some credence to entities that we have worked with before in the past that we knew we had a good relationship with. So anyways, we got the bids back in. We discussed, Dave and I discussed the things that we felt were important, like weighting the factors. We felt price was certainly an important factor. We felt our history with the company in preventative HVAC maintenance was a factor. We looked at several different factors. And when we wound up evaluating them, we scored them out based on those weighting factors. And we had two very close bidders that were within very, very close when we did our scoring. We wound up awarding the bid to NPI Mechanical simply because they did a lot of the work at the elementary school. We were familiar with their work, and we had that relationship with them. So they weren't the lowest bidder, at least when you look at the costs. But we also looked at some factors as to we weighted, like I said, 25% of our bid was, do we think they can help us with these COVID challenges with our HVAC system, and have we had a good working relationship? So we felt it was a fair way to tabulate. So Susan has signed off on this bid. One thing that I did do with them, I talked to them, the bid was put out for 3 years, and I asked if they would be willing to look at a 1-year contract with a 45-day escape clause when we talked about it, because we are able to negotiate after the bid. And the reason I did that is because there were two we are still in the process of working on the controls at our building project. And our controls bid had expired June 30th, but I could see no good reason to put the controls out to bid to bring in yet another party until we've gelled up that piece that we're working on with the building project. So what I did with we had bids out for the controls. We rejected all bids, and then after thinking about it, we are almost to August here, and we still really aren't complete on that project. So we sent a notification out to all bidders saying that at this time, we had extended a 1-year service contract to our current provider, just to allow the district time to work out the bugs of everything that's going on. And so we would look to put that out after this business cycle. And my hope is by having this 1-year escape clause with this, the mechanical contractor, if we decide or discover that having one company manage the controls and a second company manage the mechanicals is not a good model and is not working for Newmarket, I wanted to be able to put both of those services together in one bid and put them out. So it's kind of a long-term plan. NPI was great. They were glad to work with it. They actually are going to come on site and walk through some of the mechanicals with I believe it's Alliance that installed our mechanicals at the project. And they said that they're going to work up some kind of rubric for our staff to use. So if they call, they can say, I'm seeing this problem. This is where I'm hearing it. This is what it sounds like. And so NPI is going to help them walk through and say, I think that's controls. Call the control company, or you know what, that's mechanical. We'll come out. So they seem very willing to help make the situation work, and I was very appreciative of that. Again, I think service is part of the reason that we chose them. So that's the presentation on the HVAC preventative maintenance. I don't know if anyone has any questions on that. Nope. Okay. So the next one that we had in the works that we went over to was the annex project. From my understanding, the art teacher, and again, this was before my time, but the art teacher had to work out of that building while the renovations were going on. And now that that's complete and we've migrated her back to the building, we now have a building that's in need of a little TLC. In addition to providing some additional office space for some of the folks that right now are kind of doubling up a little bit in spaces. So this one was a little bit more easy to score. We had everybody come out for a walkthrough. They could bring their subcontractors if they wanted. They were allowed access to the facility to walk through. They basically got a drawing that told them what we wanted and where, and the bids kind of came in that way. So this one was a little easier to score in that we looked at what the bid specs are and we looked at price, and we did reach out and contact either by email or phone references for our 3 lowest bidders. We actually spoke to people and many of whom had were education, they'd done work for an educational institution. So we verified that they had completed what they said they were going to do, that they came in on budget and within the time frame, and the lower 3 bidders who we checked out all had stellar recommendations from people that we know in the state. So we felt that given things all being equal, in this case, we felt that the low bidder was the correct option for Newmarket. So we've awarded that to Paxor. We actually are in the process of doing some permitting right now and hoping to get that up and moving in the next little bit. Does anyone have any questions on that one?
Jana, I just wanted to say thank you for the thoroughness of these bids and the explanation and the thought process. I think it'll help us all in the long run, and I appreciate it.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. I'm new to the game here, so I certainly don't want anybody to get the impression that we're not doing things fairly or squarely. So I believe that that's the best way. And again, we look at everything as how it pertains to Newmarket, what's right for Newmarket, not what's right for the company's bidding. So thank you.
Jana, this is Amy. I had a question. I'm sorry to backtrack, but back on the HVAC, you said that, for example, for the cost for year one was 45,145. But when I add up the two amounts on the tab sheet, it's
Right.
different. Why is
You
that?
have a keen eye, Amy. So let me tell you what we did. As I mentioned, there was a markup, like a percentage markup on items that we would purchase. Plus, they gave us certain rates for emergency hours on a holiday, emergency hours on a weekend, and hours outside of our service contract on a regular workday. So what we did to make it fair is we broke that down. We said 75 hours we estimate we're going to need of hours outside. We're going to need 10 hours of after hours, and 15 hours after hours, and 10 hours on a holiday, so that we could compare apples to apples using those rates for everybody. And then for the materials price, we said we're going to estimate we spend $5,000 on materials every year. So whatever their percentage price was, we add that in. So there is a calculation of how we arrived at these numbers, but this is kind of our estimated annual costs, which rolled all of those pieces in together.
And so if we surpass, say, those 75 hours, then we would be paying beyond what the contract is, correct?
Right, we would. But the trick is, if we do the preventative maintenance right and we schedule it out the way we need to, when they're on site, we can say, hey, you know what, we have something we want you to look at, and we don't get charged for a service call. These are really the more emergent issues where, something really breaks down and you want somebody there quickly because it's 25 below and you're going to freeze a pipe, that kind of thing. So but we tried to find, again, it was a hard bid to score, because we're trying to find a way to make it fair, because some people had really high technician costs, but they had lower annual costs, and some people had high material markups and others didn't. So we tried to make it as even as possible.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? And if there are no further questions or thoughts, and I'm just trying to get back there on the title of these things, we might as well take out motions to approve right now while we're on it. So I'd entertain motions to approve the bid for the annex and for the HVAC preventative maintenance.
I'll make the motion to accept those two bids.
I'll second that, Amy.
Is there any further comment or discussion? Hearing none, by roll call vote, all those in favor, please say aye. Mike Kennison, aye.
Elizabeth McKinney, aye.
Kim Shelton, aye.
Gary Swanson, aye.
Amy Tilton, aye.
Okay, Susan, the next up is the NCEP donation. You want to cover that?
Susan, did you want me to take this one too?
Sure, I had mentioned this, I'm happy to, I had mentioned this either last meeting or the meeting before, that Linda Copey was co-recipient of the Nicholas Popoff Memorial Award. So this was the award. So tonight, we would like you to accept this so that we can move forward with allowing Linda to purchase some items to help support her work.
I move to accept the $950 donation from NECP for Linda Hopi and her hard work during this COVID.
I'll second that, Amy.
Any further discussion? Okay, again, thanks, Linda, and congratulations. By roll call vote, all those in favor, please say aye. Mike Kennison, aye.
Elizabeth McKinney, aye.
Kim Shelton, aye.
Gary Swanson, aye.
Amy Tilton, aye.
That motion is unanimously approved. Next up, Susan, we have in our packet 2 descriptions for facility department staff.
Yes, so this, Jana, do you want to review this with the board?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So the head custodian position and the custodian position, we haven't really changed your approved job description other than to add a couple of factors. The first is all job descriptions should have a classification. So if you'll notice up at the top of this, under where it says job description, it says classification non-exempt. So we added that piece. That's a Department of Labor term that we should have. And at the bottom of it, we have added the EEO statement, equal opportunity statement. That should also be contained in our job descriptions. So just best practice. So as we start to look at these job descriptions, you'll see those things getting added to all of them. The other piece that we changed under qualifications, the way everything has become so technology based, even the custodial role. We have control systems for HVAC. We have an online school dude portal to manage our assets and tell us when we have equipment that needs to be done. Everybody needs to respond and learn how to adjust things in real time. So one thing that we noticed was missing from these job descriptions was basic computer literacy, because so much of even the general custodians need to have some basic computer capability. Looking at text and email, it needs to be a responsibility of the job. And we added in some knowledge of school duty, or the ability to learn to do the work orders and the preventative maintenance as needed, because that role is so critical to the functioning of our schools. So we were just asking to be able to add that kind of qualification in as something else that we would look for in our custodial staff when we change position. The other piece that we changed, because we have been sort of in flux with the maintenance director position, but we do have someone on now as an interim. So for reporting purposes, meaning job evaluation, this position had been changed to report to the building principal, but we felt that really the reporting piece really and the evaluative piece really belonged with the maintenance director who schedules the work. So we made that change. That's not to say that the building principal cannot direct the custodians in his building to do different things. We just felt that the facility director was in a better position from an evaluative standpoint to make a judgment as to someone's performance than the building principal. So those were basically the only changes that that we made to those classifications.
Thanks, Jana. And I'm not entirely clear that we have to approve those changes. You're just making us aware of them. Yeah.
Well, we do have a custodial position that we want to fill, and it's been my understanding that the job descriptions have always come to the board for final approval. So as we start to hire for that, we wanted to add these things to that description.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you.
In that case, is there any questions or comments? Okay. Then I'd seek a motion to approve those two job descriptions.
I move that we approve the head custodian and school custodian job descriptions that are listed in our packet with the amendments highlighted.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor by roll call vote, please say aye. Mike Kennison, aye.
Elizabeth McKinney, aye.
Kim Shelton, aye.
Johnson, aye.
Amy Tilton, aye.
Okay, thank you. That motion is approved unanimously. The next item on the agenda is, Susan, is a school reopening update.
Yes, just want to thank Jana for all of her hard work, and it's wonderful to have you here, attending meetings, supporting the board and I. We've gone without for quite some time, and it's we've waited a long time to have you here, and we can already feel your presence, and looking forward to working with you.
Well, I'm delighted to be here, so thank you all too. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, so we had a resident, a parent, who requested 2 weeks ago that we put this agenda item up on for our meeting this at this time. So we have done that, and she would like to speak to this agenda item. I will just give a little bit of maybe summary information just to kind of help all of us shift our minds from bids and other things to school reopening. But if you all recall, the steering committee sent letters out 2 weeks ago giving an update on the work that has transpired from the end of school until that time. And then we had 2 meetings, one with staff on Monday, kind of an open town hall style meeting where staff could, offer suggestions, ideas, comments, questions, let us know what's on their mind. We thought that this was an important part of the process so that the steering committee and the work groups weren't, completely working in the that we would get back in touch with what parents and students are thinking at this time and make sure that we weren't missing anything important, or if there was something, that was on the forefront of everyone's mind, that we make sure that, as we put the plan together or continue planning, that we keep these things in mind so that we can make sure that we're able to answer questions as we get into deeper levels of planning. So we had those meetings, the one for staff on Monday, and Tuesday we had the meeting with parents. So I thought that went well. We got lots of questions, and those were then taken and put into themes by topics. So any questions about, remote learning went into one topic, and then all of those were shared yesterday out to the work group chairs so that they could then share that, the important ones for their particular group with their team. So, so we're moving forward. The work group chairs are going to be meeting tomorrow to develop a draft plan for the steering committee to consider on Monday, with the hope to share the final recommendation for the conceptual plan with this board Monday night. Not that we'll have a meeting, but that you'll get, the board will be sent the conceptual plan. And I say conceptual because there's different levels here, and unless the overall concept of the plan is something the board and is comfortable with, then we certainly don't want to be spending tons of time building all the details out just to find that we have to shift gears. Things, we're under really tough and stringent timelines, and we just don't want to be spinning our wheels in a direction. We all feel, since the board has been involved in the various groups, and we've been communicating out. There's parents, there's students, there's staff at from all different types of positions, members of the community that are on various groups, including like our SRO, LinkedIn, a recreation director. So we really have a nice cross section of folks that have volunteered to work. And so we're not, we're feeling like we've done several surveys, everybody's read them, feel like we're in touch with what the community wishes, and we're looking forward to being able to bring forward that conceptual plan in this upcoming week. So, planning will continue at the next level once that conceptual plan is approved, or if it's not approved, modified, and then we'll come back. And then we'll have, additional meetings to answer questions, for parents and staff again. I'm sure they'll have questions we're not going to be able to answer because it'll require, another layer of planning. So we have to do this in a real iterative process because it's complicated. It's complex, and situations change quickly. I spent several hours on the phone this morning with superintendents in our region, talking through where everyone's at, and so we can synchronize things to the extent that we're able to, given all of our circumstances are very different. Some schools are much bigger. They have more complex transportation problems. Some have much higher class sizes. It's just everyone has a different scenario locally that they're trying to develop a plan that the community makes sense for their community. So, but it's still good nonetheless to have a sense of what their thinking is and why, so that we can make sure to the maximum extent possible that we're able to dovetail. Tomorrow, as Elizabeth said, we'll find out more about SST. That's a piece that's important to the next level of planning. So we look forward to learning more about that. So, and also included in the next level is going to be, memorandums of understanding with our unions if they're required. It depends on whether or not aspects of what we're going to do will have any, implications for their CBA. I have to say that the unions and all staff have been incredibly dedicated and cooperative and flexible, and just I can't express my gratitude enough for the work and the commitment of the people that are involved in this. So, but that is an item that does need to be attended to, and always I can't say enough, and every day I say this, but it's true. The guiding principle, the number one factor that's going to determine what we do is our ability to maintain a safe environment for staff and students. And so no matter what happens, if circumstances change, if we find ourselves in a position where we can't get PPE and other things and we can't open safely, then the choice is perfectly clear. If circumstances on the ground, in the community change, or in our state changes, and we go back to shelter in place, then we will be moving forward with opening remotely, but the community has been, the majority of the community has said that they would like us to, and certainly the staff feel it, and I feel it's important for students to come back if we're able to do it safely, because an enormous factor in our ability to provide quality learning is getting to know us, the students, and it's really difficult to do that when they're not here. And so, it's our hope that we'll be able to invite staff and students back into the building safely. So much work has been done over the course of the last several weeks to allow that, but things change every day, and we'll plan for both scenarios, full remote as well as bringing students on campus, and we'll provide through the steering committee a recommendation to the board next week. So
Susan, Kim and I were talking earlier, and people are so frustrated they can't get the information they want. They're getting misinformation. They're getting rumors. I want to reiterate that it is the top priority that I can see from every district, from everyone we're hearing from, is safety. And the other thing I want to say is there are an amazing amount of people volunteering their time and reading and learning all sorts of things just so that we can open the school, our elementary school, our junior, senior high school, safely. And I just want people to realize so many people are volunteering and trying to do what's best for the children of this community, and try to be a little kind and not to listen to the rumors. Pay attention to what's happening with what we're putting out.
Susan, I think as you articulated, we're really pressed for time, and unfortunately we haven't gotten the leadership we need from state and federal levels, in my opinion. Would it be useful for the board to discuss or make a decision? Because right now we have three basic options. We have remote, we have hybrid, or we have basically full-time school. So rather than you trying to focus on three different options, would it be useful for the board to make any kind of decision tonight about whether it's remote, or whether we talk about hybrid, or whether we do want to try to go full-time back to school?
We're very close, Gary. Lots of work has been done. So as I said, tomorrow we have practically an all-day meeting scheduled for the chairs of these work groups to sit down with all of this information and then put together a conceptual plan. I really feel like next week you'll have that, and I don't want to jump the gun without hearing, more fully from each of the groups, but have been meeting once or twice a week, especially in the last several weeks. So we're really, really close. We don't want to start, a conversation about something that's not executable, or that we start rumor mills or get people worked up about something that's just not going to happen. The other night, folks were saying, well, if kids are only going to come in half day, what about this? Well, nobody said kids are going to come in half day. So to get folks worked up thinking that we're going to do one thing that's not even really possible for us, and I'm not saying that is or isn't, I'm just saying it just doesn't make sense. So I know it's hard. It's frustrating for me. It's frustrating for everyone that's working so hard, but believe me, we're really close. I just like to have the opportunity to meet with the work group chairs, process their work, and we will have something to the steering committee for a meeting, and the meeting is already scheduled for Monday with the steering committee. So these things are lined up. The only piece that's not lined up, and that's the next agenda item, is just our meeting schedule here. And there's two things that these work groups are doing. One, it's what is it that's possible? Are we able, like from the operations, can we get students in the classrooms and socially distanced by 6 feet? Yes or no? Do we need to expand the number of classrooms that we need? Yes or no? Those kinds of things. So we're pulling all of that information together, and we'll be able to move forward I think pretty quickly with putting that together. So I know it's hard. It's hard for all of us, but we're pretty close. We want to, make sure that everything is we've thought through, so we don't have a big misstep, I guess is what I'm saying, and get people upset over nothing. So
the bottom line for the people watching is a little more patience. We're all working very hard, and hopefully next week we'll have something we can present.
Yes, and also this is the conceptual plan, so it's not going to be like answer every question that the parents asked the other night. It will answer some, and then if we're good to go, then we'll dig in, and we'll figure out the next level. And then when we figure out the next level, then we'll communicate that out to the public, because the idea here is not to drop a bomb on somebody. I mean, I think that, it takes a little bit of time to kind of process some of it. It does for us. I mean, you think how much time it's taken each work group to process this, to not allow parents and student and staff the ability to hear what we've been thinking, what the, dynamics are, so they can process it and they can understand when we get, to opening school, the wherefores and whys of the choices that had to be made, So yes, we're almost there. Just a few more days.
I think it's important for folks to know too, Susan, you've said it, but I'll say it again, is that, the steering committee and the working groups have been working all summer on this. And, I sat through both town halls this week, and every question that was asked, I believe, we've looked into in one form or another, getting prepared, to get us to this point. It was an opportunity to hear people again, but we can't give answers until the school board approves it. This is very much a dynamic process. We only got the state guidelines, a week ago, if that. I think maybe it was last Friday or Thursday. Yeah. And so it's dynamic, because what I'm hopeful we'll be able to present last week is enough of information so parents, which includes everybody here on the board, right, can make informed decisions about what they're going to do this fall for their kids. And then, and then there'll be more and more details as we work out things through the month of August.
Susan, I'm sure it's part of the process, but just sort of thinking out loud, I think people were in one mindset potentially in June when the first survey went out, but maybe subsequent surveys for all the stakeholders that, the faculty, staff, students, parents, just to get where people's mindset is now, because that might sort of help us determine some of our decisions too, or directions to go.
Absolutely. So the way we're thinking about this right now, Kim, is that the conceptual plan is approved. And so there's a couple of things the work groups are doing right now. Coming together to, talk about what the particulars are with that. And then what do we need to purchase in order to execute that? Because we're going to have to turn those purchases around really quick. So like right now, there's a lot of counting of things and all of that so that we can really move forward fairly quickly. Then holding meetings again. So let people read this, let them contemplate it, and then wait a week, and then we'll have these town hall meetings again. So it'll go out. In other words, the plan, if the board approves it, will go out. Then we'll share that out with the public. We'll wait a week, and then we'll have these meetings again, staff and parents. Meanwhile, the work groups are going to continue to work, so we may have more questions answered by then, maybe not. And then, what we can do after everyone's had a chance to read it and understand it and have a meeting, then we'll send a survey out at that point. You know what I mean? So that folks are really we're informing folks to the greatest extent possible, and they have the opportunity to ask questions, and we'll answer as best we can, knowing what these important points are based on the meetings we had the other night. We know where to focus in first, second, and third based on the frequency of questions asked. So that's really the thinking. And then again, it'll be another, we'll get another level of planning. We'll send that out. We'll have a couple meetings so that really when we get to opening of school, it won't be, the idea here is not to have a panic opening. To do this as mindfully and calmly and or in an organized fashion as you can do under the circumstances, which are not going to allow us to do this without a few hiccups along the way. But that's the thinking in terms of the process moving forward. Maybe that's helpful.
It sounds great, and it's exactly what I was hoping. And I think one of the things that, and I can only speak for the working group that I'm on, but I've been amazed by, and I'm sure it goes to the steering committee and all the other ones, the level of commitment that people have had, the dedication to the process, to the desire to do what is best for everyone in our district. It's been really refreshing to see people come together over a very stressful time for a variety of different reasons. And so I just appreciate the hard work that everyone's putting in on this.
Well, I don't know, yes, if it's for me to do, but I know that Lisa Henderson had asked to put this on the agenda, and I don't want to lose sight of the fact that she would like to speak on this topic too. She is here. I see her in the attendance.
We should keep this at the end going forward. It will help our ratings. Keeps them tuned in.
Yeah.
Lisa, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. Loud and clear. Thank you for your patience.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Henderson. I live at 6 Maple Crest in Newmarket. I'm a parent of a rising 8th grader. I'm a spouse of a middle school teacher at Newmarket. And professionally, I'm the executive director of an association for not-for-profit aging services providers, principally long-term care providers, assisted living, nursing homes. And I, in that role, have been living and eating and breathing COVID for the past 5 months because arguably that's been the epicenter of the COVID experience in most states, including New Hampshire. And they had to turn on a dime and adapt and come up with incredibly in-depth new policies, procedures, protocols. And I would say that they did so with a lot of stress and pain, but they got there. But they did so because they made it their absolute top priority. And I have to say, it was a little hard to listen to this meeting where we're talking about, the cost of hoses and rugs. And I just thought, oh my gosh, this is our emergency, right? When you guys came to that point and realized, this qualifies as emergency for, authorizing expenditures. Yeah, it's an emergency and we don't have much time left. The reason why long-term care has been able to succeed in the ways that they have to, radically overhaul the way they operate is because they took a war room approach to this, right? They put all extraneous details aside and said, this is the only thing that matters right now, and we have to focus on this to the exclusion of everything else because it's that important and it's going to take that many people to put together. And I respect the collaborative approach that Dr. Givens takes to community problems and believe that input through committees is important, but I'm worried that we're in a state right now where we're, what she just described as a schedule of the committees will come together. And my husband's on one of those committees, and I haven't seen him be asked to produce a level of detail of written recommendations. It's been conversation about maybe this would work, maybe this wouldn't work. So I'm surprised to think that there will be, if other committees work that way, an ability to turn that around into a conceptual plan by Monday. I give you all the credit in the world if that can happen, but I feel like someone needs to take ownership of writing the plan, and that this may be, with less than 50 days left till school starts, a time where someone just needs to write the plan, and then you work the plan and you do resolve challenges along the way. It is an iterative process there, but the frustration of parents and teachers through those long list of questions, right, is just that, where's the urgency here? Where is the plan? Give me something, right? So I share that concern, and I don't want to belabor the particular questions that were raised on both of those sessions, because that's a level of detail that is not needed at this very moment in this meeting. But if I could maybe offer, from my experience in the COVID trenches and planning for a pivot like this, some thoughts on a lens that I think the school board should be looking at in the development of this plan for Newmarket. My first point would be, don't build a plan to suit the lowest common denominator. You'll never make everyone happy, so you have to make reasonable accommodations, but otherwise work the plan and expect consistent adherence, meaning still demand the best from teachers and students, but support the individuals who struggle with making those adjustments rather than letting them dictate the plan. We can't do that in the vocabulary era. I don't want to do school that way. We have to insist that we are going to move forward, and we're going to do so with the same intentional focus on quality and rigor of education. My second point would be, let empirical evidence be your guide first and foremost. What has science shown to reduce transmission? Masks, face coverings. So, do all that you can to legally mandate that. Provide reasonable accommodations again where needed, but by and large, staff and students are going to adjust to that. I watched a Facebook video from the rec department showing a group that's together this summer through their summer program, first graders, and they were indoors in this case, and they were all dancing together, and they were wearing cloth face coverings. And I was amazed. I thought people would be picking at them. I thought they'd be pulling them down to talk to each other. They were wearing them beautifully. They were moving around beautifully. Were they totally socially distanced? No, not completely. And we can expect that that's probably going to be the case. But had they not had masks on, would that have not been a greater risk? So create the minimum barrier. And people will adjust. Those little kids in first grade adjusted in that moment, and I thought that was really resounding. The other evidence, what have credible studies shown produces the best outcomes, academic and social emotional, during remote learning? Abbreviated live class instruction on a consistent schedule using a technology platform or learning management system that supports student interaction and engagement. For example, Zoom, not Google Meets, that proved to be really challenging for teachers to use if they used it at all. And let me just put this plug in at this point as a parent, please set the bar higher than last spring. My 7th grader then didn't have one single bit of live instruction. There was some check-ins, but I don't know how many of you have, overly verbose 12 and 13-year-olds who want to get together to talk about their feelings in a group. They don't really want to do that, but they do enjoy instruction happening live, where some of that engagement with their teacher becomes more informal, and it's just part of the mix of instruction with socialization, and the eyes on the students to see how are they feeling, how are they reacting to my content, and how do they appear to be doing in this stressful moment. If we don't work now to train teachers to insist that they do some live instruction, I'm sorry, I think folks are going to revert back to recorded lectures and static assignments on Google Classroom. And we've got to do better than that. And I think you've heard from many parents who feel that way. Back to the overall framework for a plan. We learned in long-term care is really important that COVID-specific protocols and job descriptions for staff be in place. When people don't know what they're expected to do in a crisis, there'll be a few people who will grab the reins and they'll make order out of chaos. But the majority of people will wait until someone tells them exactly what they're supposed to do. So this plan has to remove the guesswork. And also critically important that the plan needs to be, embrace transparency, and working the plan is all about ongoing frequent communication. The level of communication of nursing homes to their, the family members, the adult children of their residents, had to go through the roof because it's a high anxiety time and parents are going to feel that way in the school setting. We're past the time of wanting, rosy, appreciative emails about, everyone's patience and their flexibility. Parents want to know that they're sending their kids into a safe environment where instructional quality and rigor is maintained, even if the quantity of instruction needs to be scaled back to fit the new operational constraints. So quantity, maybe not quality, is what we're going to have to work into this plan. For the war room here, together, I just urge you to demonstrate leadership to parents and to students. Again, you can make continuous improvements, but you got to drive the process. And people are hungry, feeling like we are behind the 8 ball and behind many other districts at this point in terms of releasing a plan. So it's time to put the pedal to the metal. And I think this group here plays a part. It shouldn't all fall on Dr. Givens. Lord knows she works endless hours in support of our district, and I appreciate all that she does. But if she's going to be left to write this plan herself, then you better clear her deck so that she can do that, because that's a lot of work. But it's got to happen, and got to happen really soon. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. And Susan, there were two other, and they're in our packet, two other letters that I just wanted to summarize real quickly. Folks, if they want to, they can read them. And one letter was from Bridget Connolly on 24 Dane Road, and I'm summarizing. She emphasizes that we keep, as we've said all along, the safety and health of our students, staff, and greater community the #1 priority as we're considering our plan. She appreciated the work we're doing, and we thank her for her kind words and her thoughts. The other statement is from Cora Kelly on 18 Turkey Ridge Road. Is essentially summarizing again, keep health and safety the #1 priority, and don't fall into politics, and just keep our minds focused. Cora, thank you for those comments as well. We appreciate it. I did not receive any other public comment. Susan, did you receive any?
No, Mike, I did not.
Okay. Well, thank you for those.
Mike, you have to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry. Thanks everyone for the public comments. We encourage you to keep them coming. And we appreciate the thought. There's no monopoly here, so thanks. Next item on the agenda is our well, let me hold it there. Did anybody have any, the board have any comments or discussions on Susan's school reopening update? And obviously, we're going to talk more about it. But.
I just had concerns. Basically, it seems like a lot of work, which Lisa emphasized as well. It has to be done, and doing another survey, and that you mentioned, Susan. I just don't see how that can be done in 4 weeks' time without a delay in school opening. Is that something you anticipated, maybe? School delay of the opening?
Again, we're meeting tomorrow to discuss all those particulars, and I just, without having an opportunity to sit and meet with the various work group chairs, I'm not, all things are being considered. I'll just say it that way. All of that is in the mix. Everything's on the table.
I would just make a comment about, of course, this is an urgent situation, but we also have to do it deliberately and make sure that we're doing things right. And it's new ground for a lot of folks. I'm not, and only time will tell whether plans release now, 2 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, other districts released them, 2 weeks ago, whether those are actually going to work. So there's got to be a balance between trying to get it as right as we can, not having perfection be the enemy of the good, as the saying goes, and get something out there. But, we have been diligently working on this. And we don't, if you have an ill-conceived plan, that can be just as bad as having an early plan, so we hear you, we hear folks loud and clear, and we're trying to make that balance, and people are working hard, and there'll be a lot more detail next week. Any other thoughts?
I just keep going back to the fact that this is a moving target. Every day we learn something new. Every day we have to readjust our thinking. And the best thing to do is let this process play out. It's frustrating. We have children that want to go back to school. We need parents who need to know the plan. We're doing the best we can. We have to stick together and just support Susan and support the staff and support the committees.
Well said. Any other thoughts? All right, so on the next item up, and it relates to what we just talked about, is a board meeting schedule. Susan discussed having, the steering committee is going to meet on Monday to come up and finalize the conceptual plan so the board can have it and approve and look at it, hopefully approve it, and other more detailed work can move forward. So Susan, what would you like for the board to do in terms of a meeting date? We can all open our calendars for next week. If we get something on Monday, I suppose we can meet feasibly as early as Tuesday after the board's had a reasonable time to look at the plan, or Wednesday. What's your preference?
I mean, I'm happy to do it the sooner the later. I mean, my calendar's open because I was supposed to be on vacation next week, so I didn't schedule anything. So I'm open, and I'll be working next week. So it's whatever the board can do. I think to everyone's point, there's a level of urgency. We will have something to you on Monday, and we can have it on Tuesday. I'm fine with that. Wednesday, it doesn't matter to me, Mike. Whatever works, around your schedules here, we will, accommodate.
Can folks meet Tuesday night?
Lisa, I think we should start in-person meetings as well. If we're gonna, I think we need to give opportunity for the public to come in, hear us.
I'm not comfortable with that yet until we
I'm comfortable with that.
Well, I guess how can we send, if we're not comfortable having meetings with masks on at 6 feet, how can we expect kids to do it?
Exactly.
Well, I'm not, that's one issue. Let's discuss that. But here's the thing. It's not only, you raise a fair point, Gary, but here's the thing. I mean, and I trust me, I want to meet in person. We met in person as a facilities committee last week. We didn't expect any members of the public to attend, and none did. So one of the challenges that if we meet in person, okay, we've got to provide a physical seat for everybody who wants to be there. And of course, we won't know in advance how many are going to be there. This is going to be a pretty popular topic. And so I suspect maybe lots of folks will want to show up, and I would encourage that. And it would be great if we had a stadium and we didn't have to worry about spacing. But if you take, for example, the town has set up the auditorium at the town hall to resume public meetings. So this board and Susan and Janet, we can just barely fit around that table with a 6 feet distance rule, and there are only 12 seats in the audience for the distancing rule. So it's a matter of practicality. And could we potentially use the gym at the high school? I suppose, but then we have to go through the process of spacing out that for people and checking them in and stuff. And do we want to add that to our plate? I'm all for meeting in person, but we have to accommodate anybody who would want to show up.
But I mean, it seems, I think we spoke about this before. It seems to me if we set the gym up once and allow all town meetings and school meetings to take place there, that we could accommodate any crowd we might get. I don't see that we're not going to check temperatures or anything on everybody coming in, so I'm not sure that would be.
I don't know that, Gary, because we're doing that right now for folks who enter the high school. We're doing a checklist. We're doing temperatures. We're having folks go through that process.
They didn't do that for the town meeting, did they? The building meeting?
I mean, I think that would probably be the best practice. I mean, I can't see why you wouldn't. But here's the other thing. And I'm not. Look, I'll reiterate. I want to meet in person. This is awkward to meet like this. It's just tough. But the thing of it is the reality is, I suppose once we approve the plan, I suspect the school's going to want full access to those spaces to start setting up, be it the gym or the cafetorium. So I mean, and soon into August, I would think. So we won't have that space available.
What kind of setup do they need for the gym? I guess I don't.
Potentially, Gary, they might use it for classrooms. I don't know. I mean, that's you hear other districts, doing those types of things, using their bigger spaces. I don't know, but I'm just saying. I don't think there's any objection. I haven't heard any objection from the board about wanting to get people together, or Elizabeth has some concern, but it's a practicality. Do we want to spend our time working out the mechanics of that, or do we want to spend our time on the plan? Susan, what are your thoughts?
I agree with you, Mike. And to Lisa's point, every single one of these things, to make an accommodation to do something else, takes precious time away from staying on task with planning. And so, to the extent that we can just say laser focused on, opening school, I keep saying it over and over to the leadership team, we have one priority. We have one priority. We have one priority, and that is opening schools. And so, my preference is, that we just continue with what we're doing until we can get to the point where we can open schools. It does take coordination and time and effort away from doing the work that we're doing. So, so my preference would be that we just do this virtually. We didn't have a problem the other night. I know it's a little awkward, but folks had access, and we can certainly, make do using these tools that we have now, knowing this is not ideal. Nothing we're doing right now is ideal.
And I would add to what I said, but I would encourage public comment like occurred here tonight. I mean, the idea isn't to not have that, and just the opposite. But I just think the added task makes it.
I might be naive about what the setup would be, but I mean, Kim, Amy, do you guys have any thoughts? It's kind of a poor decision.
This is Jana. May I add a quick comment? Just because I'm on the supply side of the planning right now, as you are, Gary, and we are struggling even to find adequate sanitizers for our buildings. So opening it up to a large crowd, not only are we then going to have to sanitize the space afterwards, but we have to provide masks and we have to provide sanitizer for everyone that comes in the building in the event that they don't have it on their own. And we're really struggling to get those resources in right now. It's another side of that coin. We're in a very awkward place.
That's a fair point.
I mean, as much as I would like to meet in person, because I think, we can do excellent work that way and you can get people's body language and things that are lost in this technology, Jana's point is one that I had not even considered. That's going to add time to her schedule, to Susan's team schedule that we really can ill avoid at this time. I think when it's appropriate, we should, and feasible, we should resume in-person meetings. But to Mike's point, people should be encouraged through all measures to get public comment in, so that we can hear from the people. Because I don't want to do anything to take away from that. But I think we need to think about the whole logistics of meeting in person.
Gary, I agree. I mean, I would like to meet in person too, but I think now thinking what Jana just said, that is a really good point. Supplies are hard to get right now. I don't have a problem meeting in person, wearing my mask, being 6 feet apart. I go to the grocery store. I do all sorts of things, but I think we should think about it a little more.
Fair enough.
Before we go ahead.
Good discussion.
At first I agreed, but then, Jana, it's a good point. So.
No, absolutely.
It was one that I hadn't even considered at all. So thank you, Jana, for bringing that up.
Yeah, me too.
These, like I said, these are the things that run through my head at 2 a.m.
That's why we're glad to have you, Jana. That's why we're glad to have you.
Jana, you need to get more sleep.
Okay, so let's get down to it then. Could everybody meet as we are on Tuesday?
As of right now, Mike, I have a working group meeting from 2 to 4. So it would have to be after that for me.
Okay. Would 5 o'clock?
That works for me.
5 o'clock, Elizabeth?
Yeah, that works for me.
If Susan, that's good for you? And
Sounds good to me. I think the sooner that we can move forward, the better. And
That's the 28th. 7/28, correct?
Yes.
5 p.m. Got it.
all right, so it's set. And then at that meeting, let's consider when our next meeting will be. I think it's premature now. One thing I do want to call to your attention, though, from our last meetings, that we scheduled board retreats for August 30th and August 20th, August 13th and August 20th at 4 p.m. Now, based on all of what we just talked about, we don't need to make a decision now, but let me plant a seed of thought, is that I think we're going to be needing again, and the points have been made here tonight, to be singularly focused on this. So when we come to that point, if necessary, we may need to postpone those things out a little bit, because I think it's more important. It's most important that we direct our focus on opening and in doing it as best as we can. So just a comment, and we can consider that at the time. So we're down to some action items. There's approval of minutes. I did notice a typo that I made in the non-public minutes. It's not, the negotiation is spelled wrong. So that's the only correction I noticed. Does anybody else have any edits or corrections to the minutes for June 18th, 2020, public and non-public?
Yeah. Make a motion to the public and non-public minutes for June 18th with the correction of negotiations spelling.
Is there a second?
I'll
I'll
second
second
that.
that, Kim Shelton.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, let's do this by roll call vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Mike Kennison, aye.
Elizabeth McKinney, aye.
Kim Shelton, aye, excuse me.
Gary Swanson, aye.
Amy Tilton, aye.
That motion passes unanimously. Moving on, we have to approve the manifest. Does somebody have that handy?
I didn't get one.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in my email, so we'll take that up on Tuesday. If that's okay, Janet, does that work? Are we?
I'm not sure what has typically been done with the manifest. I know that we've had people come in and sign them. Maybe I dropped the ball there. I'll find out whether I was supposed to scan that to you or not. I'll have to ask about how that's been done in my office before.
No,
I'll
usually get it from Teresa. That's fine. We're a little off schedule here, so maybe it's not even relevant at this meeting. So in any event, if it is, we can do it on Tuesday. We've already accepted the donation. The authorization to sign OBM forms. Maybe Susan, you could, or Jana, you could explain that.
So it was, the OBM is the Office of Business Management. And basically, in order for us to accept grants, according to the state of New Hampshire, we have to have a certain registration on file. And because the officers in our organization changed, meaning me coming on, they're requiring that we complete another authorization of the OBM form. Form 3 and Form 4 and Form 1. So I believe, I don't see that in the packet though. Did you get it?
It's the second to the last. It says enclosed is an authorization to sign OBM Form 1. It's in the
Got the form though.
Yeah, I think the
form. So the letter's on the front, and then the signature page is on the back.
We didn't receive that in our packet, I'm fairly sure.
Yeah, I don't have that either. I only have the letter in my packet.
Oh, so both sides didn't get printed?
No.
I'll read it. How's that? Authorization to sign OBM Form 1, dated July 23rd, 2020. The school board has authorized the following individuals to approve and sign the OBM Form 1s, Form 3s, and Form 4s originated in the School Administrative Unit 31 at their meeting on July 23rd, 2020. The three people listed are myself, Deborah Black, the Assistant Superintendent, and Jana Mellon, the Business Administrator. And then it says the Superintendent of Schools must personally sign the reports. The Assistant Superintendent and Business Administrator may sign when authorized by the school board. Copies of the meeting minutes must be submitted to the Department of Education, Office of Business Management, Centralized Federal Funds, 101 Pleasant Street, Concord, Massachusetts, 03301-3860.
I make a motion.
Understand it at all.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. So we're giving you authorization or?
You're giving three people authorization to approve and sign the forms. Your superintendent, your assistant superintendent, and your BA.
Okay.
So I make a motion, we approve authorization to sign OBM Form 1, 3, and 4. Allowing access, or allowing authorization for assistant superintendent, and the business administrator.
I'll second that.
Is there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor by roll call vote, please say aye. Mike Kennison, aye.
Elizabeth McKinney, aye.
Kim Shelton, aye.
Gary Swanson, aye.
Amy Tilton, aye.
That motion is unanimously approved. So we're on to the, Susan, you had some nominations and a hiring update.
I do. And I have to say I'm panicking a little bit because at 7 o'clock, I have an interview with a music team, with a potential finalist for music.
So I say we move that over to Tuesday because there's no urgency to do it tonight, right?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Hit non-public really quick.
Yeah.
If that's okay, then I can get to the interview at 7.
Mike,
So
you
from
guys-
memory, sir, we've approved 6 and 7. Is everybody's memory the same?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So let's, I would seek a motion to go into non-public session pursuant to 91A:3, Roman 2, C and E.
Move Gary Swanson.
Second, Elizabeth McKinney.
By roll call vote, all those in favor, please say aye. Mike Dennison, aye.
Elizabeth McKinney, aye.
Kim Shelton, aye.
Gary Swanson, aye.
Amy Tilton, aye.
That motion is unanimously approved. We're in non-public session at 6:51. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk soon. Let's go over to our other invite. Yes. We won't, other than just a motion to adjourn. It is. Thanks, Tim. Bye. Yep.
Thanks all. Good night.